All right, folks. Welcome to the 2023-2024 New Mexico Grown Buyer Producer Meeting. I'm really excited that you guys can all be here with us today. We have a few different goals that we're going to try to tackle as we're here together. Again, thank you for making time. It's so good to see so many of our community members here to support New Mexico Grown. So before we get started, I'm going to just give us a little bit of framing and do a quick introduction. So Goatsi Hanu, my name is Elena Paisano. I am the Farm to School Coordinator with the Public Education Department. I'm an enrolled citizen of the San Carlos Apache Nation and Little Sun and Water Clan from Laguna Pueblo by adoption. I want to first acknowledge again that we're here together to hold each other in relationship around the New Mexico Grown program. We have a few goals, and I'd like to think about that in a big way. So first of all, we're here to solve some problems, right? To talk about the reality of this program. What we are trying to do is to bring New Mexico Grown, which is a farm to institution and farm to food bank program, to our communities all across the state. And so we're here to solve the problems of those that occur when we're dealing with big challenges in a modern food system. We're also here to dream big and do something that's a little bit radical, right? We're not talking about reinventing the wheel and working just with our partners that are our traditional distributors, but looking at our community members as folks that can help us achieve food sovereignty and access healthy and cultural foods. So again, welcome. We sit here today doing this land-based work on the land that has been stewarded by our indigenous ancestors across the state. So that's 19 pueblos and 4 tribes alongside other indigenous partners, and want to acknowledge that we wouldn't be here today doing this farm to institution work without that history of land stewardship and protection of Mother Earth. So with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to see if my friend and colleague Kendall Chavez is in the room to get us started.
Excuse me. Thanks, Lena.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see so many familiar faces. I was just thinking, I believe we kicked these off in person more than 5 years ago at this point, right? And so the last 2 to 3 years have been virtual due to the pandemic and just some learnings that maybe people do like to get together in these spaces, and we can really bring together partners from across the state in a way that's more equitable than meeting in regional places across the state. And so I was just reflecting on how much this program has grown. And really the impetus for the buyer growing meeting has always been that, state agencies, we all do our best, but the wisdom really comes from our farmers, our producers, and our buyers, and you all connecting to each other and having those relationships with one another and calling the state out on the things that need to be improved and the things that are working. And so that's always been the spirit of these meetings. And so really happy, Elena and others, that you all are still carrying that essence into, the 2024 school year. And so I also want to give a shout out to my agency partners. I see PED, ECECD, and Aging specifically here representing the 3 institutional buyers and then our food bank partners. Thank you for all you do. Elena, you said this isn't really radical, or actually it is radical work, right? What we're doing, the intersections between entities that often don't talk to one another, and the state acting as if it's a cooperative is really, again, the spirit of this work. And so I just want to say thank you to our agency partners also. And to our farmers, this work is really all because of you. And so thank you for your patience over the last few decades. We know that there's more work to do and things that need to be improved and administrative tweaks that need to change, and pricing and logistics and transportation. But again, these meetings are really in the spirit of finding a way to get to yes and finding a common ground on this thing that is New Mexico Grown, that's really grown into a model for the rest of the country. And so I will leave it there, Elena. Thank you again. And for those of you that are helping us with our legislative work, you should be receiving emails from me with updates on some of the bills that we're working on in our budget. And if you need any additional information or want to get more involved, please reach out. I'll leave my contact in the chat. And with that, Elena, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you for, being the one who initiated so much of this work and helped to bring it more to the formal place it is today. This work has been happening for decades from our community members out there, just connecting, right? Farmers going to the school down the road. That's how it started. And then Kendall helped to shepherd us into this place we are. So I want to acknowledge your leadership and express my gratitude.
Thanks, Elena.
Sure. All right, so we're going to do our best. We have about 3 hours here today together, and we have a few goals. We want you all to feel comfortable understanding the basics of what the New Mexico Grown program is, as well as address some of the real challenges and successes that came up this year. So learn a little bit from people who have lived experience with the program. And then we're going to do a few different skill building trainings. Later on in the agenda, we will also have a breakout session for our buyers and our producers, so we can get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of the program. We're going to get started with just kind of a high level overview. So I'm going to call upon my colleague Ophelia Stepp to explain to us, what is this New Mexico Grown program that we speak of?
Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ophelia Stepp. I'm the state nutritionist for Aging and Long-Term Services Department. So the New Mexico Grown program, what is it? It's a program that promotes the purchase of locally grown fresh produce and currently permitted food items for use in statewide nutrition programs that cater to preschoolers, school-age children, kindergarten through high school students, as well as both tribal and non-tribal senior centers. The initiative is supported by state leadership, agencies, and community partners.
Thanks, Sophia. All right, and Ms. Francesca, if you would mind introducing yourself and letting us know a little bit more about who's involved.
Hi, everyone. My name is Francesca Alexander. I'm the Food Security Coordinator over at the Early Childhood Education and Care Department. So who's involved with New Mexico Grown? Of course, our New Mexico Grown producers that grow, raise, or develop local food products. Also our buyers. So any of our New Mexico Grown grantees, including from schools, senior centers, early childhood education centers, which I'd like to mention also includes a list of different types of programs under the Child and Adult Care Food Program, like pre-K, Head Starts, daycare facilities, after school programs, out of school time networks, adult daycare facilities, emergency shelters, and now also food banks. Our eaters are also involved, so any child or adult in any of the programs I just listed. And then our support organizations like our state agencies that administer the program, our food banks and pantries, our food hubs, and other nonprofit agencies.
Thanks, Francesca. And as Francesca mentioned, the Regional Farm to Food Bank is new to the New Mexico Grown family. You guys will learn more about that today, and we have some representatives here that'll introduce you to that program. So why participate in New Mexico Grown? I'm not going to preach to the choir, because those of you that are on the buyer side or the producer side understand that you grow and you work with some of the best quality food when you're supporting our local farmers. We're also helping to keep that agricultural economy alive and valid as a form of a career path for young people, right? When I was coming up, my family members would farm, but it was always like, what's going to be your day job so you can farm? We want to see that change. We also see this program as a way to invest in stewardship of the land and continued protection of that land that we rely on to feed ourselves and our families and future generations. And by purchasing local food, we're reducing the ecological impacts that come with our large scale food system that we rely on for so many of our day-to-day needs. Overwhelmingly, I think the biggest reason is that we're increasing access to these high quality, locally produced foods for all different types of community members, ranging from quite literally birth through our early care and education centers, through the departure of life with our elder services. And so here we are along the entire lifespan, bringing healthy, locally produced foods to our community members that are grown with love and care by our local farmers who do this as a way of life and as a passion. And I just really want to express gratitude again for everybody along that journey that contributes, and that together what we are doing is we're creating an alternate pathway. We're finding ways to reinvest in our relationship with food and not just see it as something that we consume, but something that we carry with us, that we build our lives around, that we center as a priority. And I think it's a beautiful thing when our institutions and organizations can model that. All right. I think my friend and colleague Mike Chavez is out there somewhere, and he's going to speak a little bit about the experience of how New Mexico Grown got to where we are today. But these numbers represent where we are literally in the moment. So my colleagues and I pulled some data, and we are just proud to say that so far this year, in this school year, so July 1 until today, we have served over 473,000 meals to community members, again, aging from our earliest eaters to our elders with New Mexico grown food. There's been over $1 million spent already, and we are anticipating, of course, to continue to see that number increase dramatically as we close out the fiscal year. And we've had so many sites across the state, so over 640. And again, that represents anything from what Francesca was saying, preschools, individual sites, senior centers, folks that purchase for multiple centers, school districts, public schools, charter schools, everyone. So I just want to really applaud all of your efforts and hand us over to Mike so that he can tell us a little bit more about how we got here and what that journey has been like with PET.
Thanks, Elena. So anyway, I'm Mike Chavez. Good to see everybody. So, it's kind of exciting what's happened over the past 12, 13 years since this has all begun here in our state of New Mexico. And just to see, currently right now with over 473,000 meals just with New Mexico grown foods, that's incredible. When this all started, we were in a little house over there on the side of over by the federal building by where we're housed now. And we were meeting with Pam Roy and some other folks, and we weren't sure how we were going to do this. And, we were really nervous, and we weren't sure if we're going to have enough farmers to provide just enough produce for the little grant that we had at that time. And just the growth that we've seen over the years is incredible. It was just maybe $100 and some thousand at that time. Now we have 1.2 million, and we've spent over $1 million now. So, it's a tribute to all the people that have been part of this, and just having it grow from, Pam to Kendall and now to Elena, and to all the farmers and all the schools and everybody that's been part of this. It's a tribute to you and to all what you've done for us. So, I just want to thank you. And it's just great to see it kind of grow, and it's going to continue to grow and get better. And just to see 640 schools and senior centers, that's a lot of people that are being fed, and a lot of kids and elderly and families that are just getting this free, fresh New Mexico produce. And I'm excited to see kind of where this is headed from now on. But anyway, I'm Mike Chavez. I'm the director with the Public Education Department with the Student Success and Wellness Bureau. And I just want to thank everybody for all that you do. Thanks, Elena.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks for being among those first few brave folks to take this and really promote it in our agencies and institutions. Again, I know that this work has been happening neighbor to neighbor, community member to community member, but that formalization process that brings us all here today is an important milestone in New Mexico Grown's history. All right, so we want to hear from you guys. I know a number of you out there might be new to the program, but also a lot of you have had some experience with New Mexico Grown. So we invite you to respond in the chat. My colleague Rita is going to put a little question out there, but we want to hear, how have you used New Mexico Grown? And if you have, what did you love about that experience? And what could have worked better? And we will be addressing these a little bit later in the session. And so please feel free to speak up. If we don't have time to address your concern or to kind of raise up your highlights, we will be doing that in the future. So please just know we take it very seriously. We want to make this program work for you. So please respond and engage in the chat if possible. All right, I'm going to pass it over to my friend and colleague Denise Miller with the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association to talk to us a little bit more about some of the changes we saw this year in the program.
Thank you, Elena. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to see so many faces and squares here with us today. I'm Denise Miller, the Executive Director of the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. And the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association's role in the New Mexico Grown program is by way of the Approved Supplier Program primarily, which has a number of functions, but it's the Approved Supplier Program really helps all the buyers know that they are purchasing the safest, highest quality food that is available. And it was through our food safety training with farmers that we sort of entered this arena. And we're really grateful for the agency partners as well, who make the procurement and who have done so much work on the coming together as a unit. Really, it's been amazing to watch. And of course, the farmers and now ranchers. So I'm going to talk at kind of a high level about 3 of the new developments that have taken place over the last year. And then you'll hear more about these things later from my colleagues. And please know that there will be lots of other resources shared after the meeting. And if, because each of these program areas has a lot of details. And so don't worry about trying to, take notes, or if you're not sure what something means, we are all available for technical assistance in the days and weeks and months going forward. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some changes with the addition of the Regional Farm to Food Bank program into the New Mexico family of programs. I'm also going to tell you about how meat got added, which is really important, and then a little bit about the expansion of some new products into the product categories that are allowed for purchases. So the Farm to Food Bank project is really exciting. It's something that started, the federal grant was received in October. It is really just getting started now because there's a lot of foundational work that's happening with our food bank partners. But this is a partnership with the Food Depot, who will be doing the procurement on behalf of the association, the New Mexico Association of Food Banks, and also the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, who is really stewarding and steering the project, and the NMFMA on the producer side. And so and you'll hear a lot more of the details later from my colleague Meredith, but I think the thing that's important to note about the Regional Farm to Food Bank program are some of the differences, because there are many things that the reason it fits within the New Mexico Grown program is because it shares so many of the goals, like supporting our small and mid-scale producers and creating food access across the state. So there's many things that it has in common. Some of the key differences, though, are it's currently just a federally supported program versus the New Mexico Grown to Institution, which is state funded primarily. There's also a difference in some of the allowable products. And right now, most of those allowable products are actually the same, because it's just taking a little while to build out the different product categories. In the future, there will be dairy and eggs that are allowed to be purchased within the Farm to Food Bank program. And those are not part of New Mexico Grown, but those will be built out in the months to come, in the near future. The reason that there's some differences in those allowable products is because the schools and the senior centers have certain nutrition standards that they have to uphold. And so that's one of the reasons for some differences there. Another thing that's really important to all of the programs, including the Farm to Food Bank project, is that it seeks to provide farmers with really fair prices for their products. So we hope you will all be finding that in the near future as well. So then just to skip over to the meat, the addition of meat to the New Mexico Grown, this was a really big addition that we started a pilot last year. It came about because of the additional funding provided by the state of New Mexico to New Mexico Grown, which made it possible to add protein into the allowable products. It started with a roundtable with many industry stakeholders to determine particularly what the definition of local meat was going to include. And again, you're going to hear more about this later from my colleague Brian, but we now have all of our agencies and the food banks can purchase beef, lamb, and pork. And so it's really wonderful to be able to bring ranchers and into this, into the New Mexico Grown program, and our communities who want the protein on the plate. And there's lots of cuts available that are on the product list. So ranchers can, provide a variety of different cuts of meat as well. So I think that's all I'll say about the meat pilot. And we were also very careful to call it a pilot because that first year we are still learning, and there are some some other considerations that the ranchers have to take note of in terms of packaging and things going through a USDA plant and things like that. But it's been a really, I think we've got 22 producers right now, producers, distributors, and food hubs who are approved suppliers of meat products. So it's really growing very well so far. And then finally, the third thing I'm going to just talk about a little bit is the expansion of the minimally processed foods into our allowable products list. And so the allowable products list is something that the buyers use to reference the different types of products that they can purchase. And it's also useful for producers who can look at it and who can, say, oh, I see I can provide applesauce now, or, 100% New Mexico grown fruit juice is allowed. So the allowable products list, which has both meat and what we're now calling Produce Plus, has all the different types of products that can be grown, purchased, etc. Now includes, and the reason we've called it Produce Plus is it includes legumes, nuts, of course it's fruits and vegetables, and also grains. And the minimally processed area includes, when a product undergoes some processes that don't fundamentally change the nature of the product. So if it's been cut, diced, shredded, frozen, those are all minimally processed processes. And I think there is only one item that is actually processed, and that's applesauce, which is currently allowed. Fruit juice is considered minimally processed. There's an entire list of culturally relevant products, things like pozole, which can be frozen and it's nixtamalized, if I'm saying that correctly, atole, which can be roasted, herbs that can be dried, teas. There's just a whole list of products. So the approved supplier program list is, or the allowable products list, is just a wealth of information about the different types of products that can now be purchased and grown and sold. I think that's it.
Thank you, Denise. And again, we will dig more into all of that. So stay tuned. And if you have questions about products, we'll cover those also in the producer and buyer breakout sections and give you guys a sneak peek at the allowable product list that she's referencing. We really do hope that it encompasses everything. And our goal, again, is to make sure that all of our cultural foods here in the state are incorporated into our program and centered. And so if you are a buyer and you run into something that you didn't want, that you couldn't see there, reach out to us, let us know. There might be a reason. And if not, we're happy to add it. All right, so I'm real quickly going to just introduce, and again, we'll dig in deeper later, but how do buyers get started with New Mexico Grown? So first of all, say that you are here representing a program, a nutrition program, either serving K through 12 schools, seniors, or early eaters. The applications are open to you, and me and my colleagues will talk a little bit deeper about that in one of the breakout sessions. We'll actually go through the process of what it looks like for each of our agencies. But the commonalities are that there's an application. So this program has been set up as a grant program. So in other words, you submit an application to your state agency partner. That's me if you're a school, that's Francesca if you're an early childhood education center, and that's Ophelia if you represent senior centers. So we're people, we're here to help you with that application. Our goal is that the application isn't too hard, but there are some questions on there just so that we can better support you and understand your goals. Then you receive a funding notice, and that can happen a few different ways depending on which agency you're working with. But in that notice, you'll receive a budget. And you'll see, I think with the increased investment from our state legislature, those budgets are pretty ample. You can do a lot. You can get local food on the plate, certainly multiple times. And our goal is to see all local food plates, right? Now that we've expanded into allowing proteins, we want to challenge you to make an all local plate and share that with us and inspire others to do the same. Couple of things, again, the funding, the budget is on a reimbursement basis. So you receive a grant, however, you expend the purchase. Then again, there's a process for each one of these. but you submit your reimbursements to your state agency, we pay you back. And that's how that kind of flows. You hold the relationship with your grower. And I think that that's something that's really powerful and that we definitely want to preserve, right? So you have that opportunity to identify growers that you want to work with and hold that relationship. We just help cover the bills. Then you start purchasing local products. And Denise alluded to this. There is an approved supplier program. And the reason of that is to ensure food quality and food safety going to some of our most vulnerable populations with public dollars. And so we have an approved supplier program. My colleague Brian will dig into that more. I just want to say, I think it's really exciting. I've done this work around the country. Not all states have this kind of locally grown supplier program. And what it does, hopefully, is increase access for more diverse producers. So we'll talk more about that later. But you do need to source from an approved supplier. We're here to help you find them. This whole community is here to help you find them. And then you'll purchase those products. You may do purchasing from July 1 through June 30th. In this case, we're looking at next year. So it'll start July 1st, 2023, this summer, through June 30th, 2024, next summer, because we operate on the fiscal year. So you might be like, wait, that's not when my school is in session. You can purchase for summer food as well if you would like to. So that is the span that the purchasing and the budget lasts for. Our applications are opening soon on the buyer side. So at PED and Aging and Long-Term Services, we're getting ready to launch our applications next week. So stay tuned. You will receive a follow-up email with information about those. They'll be open for the whole month of March. If you have questions, again, you can reach out to us. We'll talk about it more in the buyer breakout. ECECD, they are still actually working with funding from last year. So they'll be opening their new RFA in April, and Francesca will share more about that with us later. But our goal also is to try to streamline it. So farmers out there in the room and food producers, we really want all of our agencies to have similar procurement processes and application processes so that you hear from all of us, right? You might hear from the senior center and the school in your community in July because they know they have a budget and they got money. And now you're like, oh, I can sell to multiple institutions in my community and they more or less require the same thing. So I just want you to know that's our long-term goal. We're working on it. We're de-siloing agencies. We still have different needs, but we are really, the three of us individuals and all our support partners are committed to trying to make this work for you. And so again, we're really proud that we were able to even align our applications this year. That's actually a big gain. And if you understand any of the bureaucracy components of getting legal contracts out there, you'll get that that's a huge win for this year. So we have more than enough funding. We welcome all to apply. We'll talk more about who is eligible, but I think there's a really broad definition of who's eligible to receive these funds. Also, I do want to acknowledge within the New Mexico Grown family is our Farm to Food Bank partners. We're going to leave that to Meredith and Bonnie to talk about more about their process for applying. We also have partners here from New Mexico DOH who run similar local food procurement programs, and they'll talk a little bit more about those in the buyer and producer breakout. So Veronica Grego, hi, you're out there somewhere. She'll be here to talk to you about their purchasing program and how you can get involved. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Brian to give just a quick overview about how farmers and food producers get involved. And I am doing the MC of all screen sharing. So just give me 1 second.
Thanks, Elena.
You got
hi, everyone. I'm Brian Crawford Garrett. I'm the Director of Food Systems Initiatives at the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. And a big part of my job in that role is supporting the approved supplier program. So I'm just going to give a brief snapshot now of what the approved supplier program is, and then there's a couple other sessions where we'll go into further details. You can go to, yep, perfect. Thanks. So just to start, the approved supplier program, it supports New Mexico Grown and is meant to help our small and mid-scale producers in particular to be able to sell to buyers in a way that ensures food is safe for the populations that those buyers serve, including students, elders, and other vulnerable groups, while at the same time reducing the barriers and burdens that often prevent smaller scale producers from participating in these types of programs. So the approved supplier program is really tailored specifically to the needs of New Mexico producers and buyers. And it's designed to grow and diversify the base of New Mexico producers that are selling to New Mexico grown buyers. At its core, it's really about local producers feeding their communities. Next slide. So the approved supplier program provides easy access for producers to New Mexico grown purchasing by schools, senior centers, early childhood education centers, and food banks. It provides an inclusive and accessible way for producers to sell to those buyers. And it really is, and just want to kind of really emphasize this point, it's the entry point for a producer to New Mexico grown, as all New Mexico grown purchases must be from approved suppliers. It also offers, as we've discussed, food safety and quality assurance to the buyers. And right now, it's currently categorized into 2 supplier lists. And that includes one for the produce plus products, and that's the produce, nuts, grains, and legume products. And then the other is for meat. And meat, we have, Denise mentioned beef, lamb, and pork. And then we also have bison and mutton as meat products that can be sold through New Mexico grown. And then lastly, the approved supplier program is managed by the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association on behalf of the state of New Mexico. So for upcoming fiscal year 24 opportunities, and as Elena mentioned, that is for starting July 1st, 2023, and then going through June 30th, 2024. We have 2 timelines for applications. For the Produce Plus products, the applications are set to go live this coming Monday, February 27th. And then the initial priority deadline will be March 31st. And then applications will still be accepted past March 31st on a rolling basis and reviewed as they come in. And then for the meat products, it's on a slightly different timeline because this year has been, as Denise mentioned, a pilot year, and we're still trying to gather learnings and feedback on this year so that we can have a tailored and improved application for FY24. So we plan for those to go live around May 1st, and then to have initial priority deadline for the meat applications of May 31st. And like the Produce Plus applications, anything after May 31st will be reviewed on a rolling basis. And we'll go over additional details on the application process, as well as the requirements for those applications a little bit later today. But I think it's important to note that this timeline really helps us ensure we have a full new approved supplier list for the Produce Plus category and the meat category by the end of June, ahead of the start of the fiscal year for 24. So just as I mentioned, coming on Monday, the 27th, we'll be putting out the application links for suppliers with Produce Plus products, and that'll come, for those who are attending this meeting, that'll come in a follow-up email. We'll also put those on our website, as well as circulate through our other outreach social media channels and the like. We're also working on a overall approved supplier FAQ document. We had one of those last year, and so we're updating that document, and it should be ready to go out early next week on the 27th as well. And then, as I mentioned, by on or about May 1st, we'll have the application links ready and sent out for the meat suppliers. Next slide. And in terms of approved supplier support, the NMFMA really is here to help. I'll talk a little bit more in the next session that goes into detail on the approved supplier program about some of the food safety trainings that we work with partners to provide. But we also offer technical assistance. It can be on farm, it can be by phone, over email, whatever is the need for the producer to help them get into the program, and that sort of thing. And we have an approved supplier program coordinator, Sheena Tallis-Tallman, who supports this program, and then Michael Venticinque, who is our value chain coordinator, myself. And then we also have a group of newly started part-time contractors who are going to be working on outreach and technical assistance for the approved supplier program in a couple of geographic regions. And these new positions are called community cultivators and include Nettie Martinez and Angel Ortiz in northern New Mexico, as well as Zach and Mary Bin in Navajo Nation and Shiprock area. And if you are a producer in these areas, you can, and you have questions or want to know more about the approved supplier program or food safety trainings, that sort of thing, you can reach out to one of them. Again, we'll go into more detail on how to apply, what the requirements are, our food safety trainings, that sort of thing in a little while. And this contact information can be made available in follow-up email that Elena will be sending. So I think I'll stop there for now. And Elena, back over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the overview. And again, we'll dig deeper into this. I hope that you guys are all understanding that there's a big community of people here to serve you, both through our nonprofit partners as well as our state agencies. So thanks for showing up and learning more. And we hope we can be there to help you get to the place of making sales and getting your beautiful food on the plate. Or if you're a buyer, of working with some new farmers and forging some new relationships that will hopefully last a long time. So we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to stop talking at you and we're going to hear from people who have experienced the program. So we asked a few of our partners who have, as I said, experienced the program over the last couple of years as different types of producers to come here and share, as well as some of our buyers that have worked with New Mexico grown product. I will just say, I think all these folks are amazingly inspiring, and it's what keeps me passionate about doing this work every day. And I just want to say again, thank you. So we'll get started. We're going to go a little bit alphabetically here because that was the easiest way that I could think about it. We'll start with our friends over at Agricultura Cooperative Network. And I think we've got Jessica Swan and Latrell Kai out there somewhere. There's too many tiles, but if you can unmute, we will get you pinned and you can tell us a little bit about your story, helping to bring New Mexico grown to your communities.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Swan. I've been working with Agricultura since 2014. Agricultura Cooperative Network was established in 2009. We've been very involved in our policy work, so getting New Mexico grown into the schools has been a huge push by our elders and our efforts. We are the first food harmonized USDA GAP certified food hub in New Mexico. Food safety is super important to us. We've passed 4 audits this last year with 95% or above. We are a model for not only New Mexico, but for the US Department of Agriculture. We are very interested and have the knowledge to help with receiving of vegetables and delivering of vegetables. So again, that harmonized GAP certification is really important for food safety reasons. And what we do right now is we continue to move about 7,000 pounds of New Mexico grown foods every week. And those go to our partner organizations like New Mexico PED, which we're so grateful for our partnership with them, and also to the senior centers, which that avenue has been expanding, and of course the early childhood education. And then we also run our community supported agriculture projects, and we sell to the restaurants and the cafes. And we are located in the South Valley of New Mexico, but we are delivering throughout New Mexico. We're happy to be supporting our partners up in Zuni and Gallup and San Juan, and our other partners down in Alamogordo and Querisoso and Tularosa. And we really look forward to continuing to be a model and a front runner in this New Mexico grown, in addition to the value added. So our organization is able to chop, dice, peel, freeze, whatever our institutions want. We have the capacity to do that because we have the storage, cold storage and freezer space. And then we also have our mobile trucks as well. And we look forward to more breakout sessions, learning about what schools are looking for. And again, we've been doing this work since 2009. And so we're really excited to have more people at the table, and we have a lot of resources within our organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, so much for sharing about Agricultura. Would you mind if popping your website maybe in the chat for folks if they want to learn a little bit more about you guys? Again, I just want to underscore what Jessica shared. Agricultura has been at the table since the very beginning. Before it was agency wide, they were building those relationships across the Albuquerque metro area and have worked with so many producers and just have a lot of wisdom to share. So thank you, Jessica. We also want to send gratitude for Helga, who's not here today, but is absolutely a leader and matriarch in this work. So thank you. All right, now I'm going to take a moment to introduce some newer folks to the New Mexico Grown program, which is our friends Zach and Mary Ben with Bitty Baby Foods. So I'm happy to screen share for y'all if you would like. I know you have a little presentation, or you can, that's up to you. Awesome.
Awesome. Can you see my screen and hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely, Mary.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. So we are Bitty Baby Foods. My husband and I, Zach, started at the emergence of the pandemic. Our family has been farming for generations. Our son is going to be the 7th generation farmer. And we use kind of only traditional methods of planting and cultivation and harvesting, which nowadays I think a lot of folks are like regenerative agriculture is coming up a lot, but those concepts have been around, at least in our family, for quite a long time. We're located in Gadiaje on the Navajo Nation, which is just maybe 20 minutes southwest of Shiprock. We have a 16-acre plot, which you can see here. We grow a variety of, like the Three Sisters, a variety of corn, squash, and melons, as well as Tepary beans and Hopi amaranth. We are hoping to add more specialty crops because that's something that we heard from our buyers this past year, is kind of diversifying some of the availabilities for the school lunch menu. So just briefly about our structure, we do have an agricultural cooperative, an LLC registered with the tribe, but we also have a 501c3 registered with the state of New Mexico. We felt like in our community where, locally grown and traditional foods have been intentionally removed, it was really important for us to not just work on the supply side as producers, but also work on the demand and to be able to receive grants to help, support accessibility and affordability of these products for our community. So, overall, our mission is to reconnect Indigenous families with our longstanding relationship between earth and parenting. And we believe that there's a direct connection between nurturing the land and nurturing our children, and that by understanding how to grow traditional crops and preparing them for young children, we're actively dismantling those systems of oppression while also rebuilding Indigenous foodways. So just, I think we were asked to share some pros and cons, I guess, of the approved supplier experience. This last year was our first year being on the approved supplier list. And I know there's going to be more conversation in breakout rooms about this later, but just in our first year, we were able to sell several thousand pounds of produce to our local school district. And really, like, first and foremost for us, this is really important because, it's our mission to increase access to these foods among children and, amongst those who are not able to afford them. And so to be able to get them in childcare centers and pre-Ks and schools is really important to us. It allows you to sell larger quantities at one time. It also allows you to set your own prices, which is nice. And there can be forward contracts as well. So you and the schools can start, planning now for what they're going to want on their menus. And this allows you to kind of know staffing wise, like how many staff you're going to need for what orders at what time. And then it allows you to establish those connections with buyers directly. If you're not an approved supplier, you could also work through a food hub, and they can make those connections for you as well. That might be an easier way to kind of ease into the first year. And then this past year, we were fortunate to work really closely with Marie Johnson at Farmington Schools. And so we got to see a lot of our produce on the menu for Indigenous Week that they had. And that's a picture. This is a picture of that, one of those events as well. So not that there are many cons, but if there's opportunities for improvement, I do think that just from our perspective, there were at times maybe miscommunications between the food hub or the buyers. We were asked to fill some kind of like last minute contracts that weren't able to be completed. And there was a misunderstanding of like, what is sweet corn versus what is, Navajo white corn. And so like clearly defining what the scope of your produce and your products are is really important. And also accompanying that, having very detailed processing and handling requirements. So sometimes, if you're used to purchasing foods from Sysco that can be stored for days or a week before you process them, that's not necessarily the same for some of the products that we handle, which are organic and maybe more time sensitive. You process them quickly. We also, with our 501c3, we were able to get a grant and we brought on a Navajo dietitian. We felt like that was really helpful to be able to create bulk recipes for the kitchen staff. And also to do, she's available to train some of the kitchen staff or work with some of the faculty so that we can incorporate more locally grown specialty and Indigenous crops into the menu. And then lastly, we did a number of presentations for some of the pre-Ks around Farmington schools, which was really, we got a lot of positive feedback, not only from the kids, but from the teachers, that they really felt like that helped them connect more to their food and understand where it came from. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to, hearing more about how it goes in future years and hoping to see your business grow. And again, I just really want to express gratitude for your approach to this work personally. I think it's really a big mission that you're holding, and thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to pass it over to Megan Foote with Foote Family Farms to talk about their role in New Mexico Grown as one of our New Mexico Grown meat vendors this pilot year, who was at the table from the very beginning, helping to contribute to the roundtables as we were scratching our heads saying, how do we make this work? So thank you, Megan, for being here.
Hey everyone, well, thanks for having me and thanks for including meat in this program. I just dropped a little note in the chat with some of my contact information and kind of an overview of us, but my husband Garrett and I live in Texaco, New Mexico, so we're on the far eastern side of the state. We have Foote Family Meats, and so we have a meat market that we just recently opened in, I guess it was November of this last year. And it is in Clovis. The headquarters of our cattle operation is in Texaco, and then we also run some cattle in Texas as well. The primary focus for our meats program, though, is all New Mexico grown beef. We're involved in the cow-calf operation, the cow-calf side of things, stocker cattle, and the feed yard and finishing phase. But our primary focus is we raise about 100,000 head of stocker cattle here in New Mexico, and then also some in our yards in Texas. We started our meat business back in 2020 when COVID hit. And one of the things that has always been a struggle for us, we sold locally here in Clovis, and then we also shipped our meat across the country online. And one struggle that we had was that our middle meats, so our ribeyes, fillets, all of our steaks and things like that would sell out very quickly. And we would be left with a lot of ground beef, a lot of stew meat, fajita meat, things of that nature. And so that inventory would start to pile up. And what was really nice was when this program started, we began working with our local food banks and the schools around here. And those were products that they were interested in taking. And so for us, it helped us to grow our business to the point where we were actually able to make that transition of just being a small local producer who was selling, we had a little freezer trailer that we were selling meat off the side of the road that people would come to for like events and things like that. Or they would order online and pick up somewhere in town. But it has actually allowed us being able to sell all of that ground beef through the schools, and having these different outlets has allowed us to be able to transition into actually having a storefront. So that's been huge for us this last year. One of our big focuses going into it this next year is we'd like to kind of be able to expand who we're working with. So we'd love to be able to work with some more schools. We are working diligently to increase our availability for transport. So we've been working with a lot of people here, but I've gotten a lot of outreach from people across the state that have been interested in buying some of our products. And so we've invested in reefer trailer, and we're kind of working through the logistics as far as travel goes. So if you're not local to the eastern New Mexico side of the area, reach out to us. We have a couple of different routes that we're going to be putting into place over the next couple of months. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. I think one of the other struggles, which everyone has been pretty open-minded to, that we've been working with since we got into the program, is there is a reality when it comes to pricing. There's just the fact of the matter is when it's locally raised and we're processing, anywhere from 5 to 30 head in comparison to what the large packers are processing in a day. They're doing it for pennies on the dollar. Our processing costs are much higher. So when it comes to products like ground beef and things that you would typically be able to get very cheap in the grocery store, or that you guys may have been able to source directly from the packers at really, really cheap prices, for us, I think it's just important to keep in mind that our break even on even those lower quality products in comparison to like your ribeyes and things like that, our break even is several dollars higher than what you may have been able to purchase for it before. Our goal is to basically be profitable in moving volumes of meat, as opposed to trying to make just giant profit margins on each individual product. So we do our best to be as competitive as possible. But the reality is it's just always going to be a little bit higher. That really hasn't been an issue for us. It's just, as there's new people coming onto the program, just something to keep in mind. I think all of the producers do the best job that they can to be as competitive as possible so that, inventory doesn't pile up and that stuff moves. We realize it's higher, but at the same time, we also feel that the quality of the product and you guys knowing exactly where it's coming from and the fact that it is local justifies that price difference as well. I think that's about it as far as the information that I have to share. Again, just super thankful to have been a part of this journey so far. And I encourage, anybody who's interested in participating, or if you guys have any questions, if you're a grower and you're kind of looking to learn more, feel free to reach out. My contact information's in the chat. If you're a buyer, if you're in our area, I'd love to chat with you guys. And if you're not in our area and there's something that we can work out logistically to get our products to you, we'd love to see if we can make that work.
Thanks, Megan. All right, I think we'll go a little out of alphabetical order and we'll stick with our partners from the meat sector. So we've got Manny and Zenas here from Trilogy Beef. Again, want to express gratitude. And Manny was also at the early conversations about how do we make this work. And, just want to say it is a pilot. We appreciate the patience, particularly of our meat producers, as we figure out how to bring New Mexico grown meats into our institutions, and want to echo something Megan said, which we know that price is a factor, but it is a different product when you have local meat. And I think those of our partners out there that have already worked with it this year and served it understand that. And so again, thank you guys for being the pioneers in our meat program. So Manny with Trilogy Beef.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. What a privilege again to be at the table with this whole initiative. We're fifth generation ranchers. My wife and I raise our 7 children on Buffalo Creek Ranch, just south and west of Moyerty, New Mexico. This truly is the highlight of the opportunity that selling into the New Mexico Grown program has for our family. We own Trilogy Beef Community. We are a 100% New Mexico born, raised, and harvested program. Like a lot of people in the beef business, in the ranching business, we built Trilogy Beef out of need. Prior to the pandemic, when we got into the restaurants, which was our primary outlet. And today it's really blossomed kind of full circle, where we're actually spend a majority of our time feeding families. The uniqueness of our program is, and with all of our customers that we try to emphasize, whether we're at a farmer's market or we're selling to high schools, school districts, senior living centers, is trying to get a lot of the cooks and a lot of the chefs to think outside the box. Again, a lot of people are used to certain cuts for certain dishes, and we really try to maximize the educational aspect of whole carcass utilization, and really try to challenge, again, chefs and cooking staffs to utilize some other types of cuts to maybe arrive at the same nutritional guidelines. And so that's kind of the fun part of it. We do harvest fresh every week. Locally here, about 15 minutes from the ranch, which is very unique. We're very blessed with that relationship with a good packer that presents our product very well. And we try to match, again, like Megan was saying, we have a certain break even when you're selling meats into these systems, because we have our cost of production is so much higher. But we try to get a really good relationship with those buyers to better understand what their needs are, so that we can try to price in the product the best that we can based on the types of meats that they're looking for. Our whole customer base really has changed. Again, we were used to be in the restaurants before COVID. We still spend a lot of time front and center visiting with a lot of people at farmers markets. Again, that's very important in the business that we're in. And if for those of you buyers that are out there, we really like to go sit down face to face with your kitchen staff and really try to determine whether or not these relationships would work. And that's just a part of the business that we're in. It's all about the people and the clientele that you're serving at the lunch table or the dinner table. We're really into customizing the relationship, customizing packaging, whether you're in with the food depots, the food banks, where you feed individual households. We try to do things responsibly. So we try to package responsibly, whether we're feeding families in 1 pound packages of ground beef, or we're feeding bigger establishments. We really try to focus in on what makes the most sense in packaging size. So again, we go to senior living centers at Sandoval County, Las Cruces, and we package a lot of those ground beef, stew meats, fajita packages in bigger packaging sizes. So we have that opportunity, again, because we're locally based and we have the relationships with our packer. You know, come and see us at the farmers markets. That's where we're based out of at Santa Fe every Saturday. It's a great place to kind of come see what our product looks like. I did drop my information in the chat earlier. But you know, kind of going back to some of the things that we've learned through the pilot project is, you know, again, a lot of it goes back to relationships. These, you know, especially working with school districts and senior living centers, it is volume. If you're a grower out there, so you have to understand the volume needs that a lot of these establishments do need. And I would say probably the biggest challenge or obstacle that we face, again, is just ensuring agreements on the front end, right? Making sure that payment, you know, because we're not getting rich in this business by no means. I think we're helping our family operations survive, but making sure that the contracts are clearly written, that payment is timely. I think that's always important. And I think those just boil down to conversations. And we've been blessed along the way to have really good relationships, again, with the buyers out there from more the institutional side and the school districts. But I would just kind of urge those new growers to make sure that those things are really tight and clear on the front end, so that you can ensure that it's not going to negatively affect your cash flow. But other than that, it's an upside, and it's so awesome to see this whole pilot program come to fruition. We hope to see more New Mexico ranchers and growers involved in this program, because there is a lot of opportunity and access to so many outlets. One of the new things that we'll be adding in 2023, again, just based on our customers, is we're going to be adding lamb and mutton and pork. Again, just because it's what our customers want, and I think it's part of our legacy, especially on the sheep, on the lamb and the mutton side. It's part of our legacy. It's how we got into the livestock business, dating back to the late 1600s. And so it's a great way for us to tell our story and how we've used other species to manage the natural resources in the region that we've been in for so long. So I'll leave it with that. I know I only had 5 minutes, and I'm sure I've already gone over, but I appreciate the time and opportunity, and I'll look forward to going out into the break-in sessions with y'all.
Thank you so much, Manny. All right. I am also gonna I'm gonna stop your screen, Manny. Our next presenters are Ben Rasmussen, and I'm not sure if Johannes is with us as well today, but Ben Rasmussen from Frontier Food Hub, to talk a little bit about how their experience with New Mexico Grown has been as a food hub. So let me just.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey.
Thanks for sharing these beautiful photos.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Johannes can't make it with us today, so I'm here in his place. But my name is Ben Rasmussen. I'm with the Frontier Food Hub. We're out of Silver City, New Mexico. We are a nonprofit food hub. We started officially back in 2018. And I believe at that point, we were doing school sales, but that was slightly before the approved supplier program. So that was kind of this glorious, lawless land of school sales at the time. And we started with Deming and Lordsburg schools. So we're based out of Silver City, and we cover a pretty wide area. We work primarily within Southwest New Mexico, but weekly ship our food, all the way up to Albuquerque and Santa Fe, down to Las Cruces, Anthony, things like that. We work with about 20 to 30 growers on a yearly basis, with a core group of about 10. NM grown markets have been huge for us over the last couple years, really growing. They're now taking up probably about a third of our total business. So in 2022, we sold to 18 different public institutions in Silver City, Catron County, Lordsburg, Deming, Las Cruces, Hatch, Truth or Consequences, Capitan, and McKinley County Senior Centers. It's definitely our fastest growing market. We really appreciate kind of the flexibility that the schools and senior homes offer. We're still onboarding new clients right now, and most of them have had an overall very positive experience. purchasing our food, and are really good points of like feedback on different products that we have. We definitely view the schools and senior homes as partners in kind of the connective and supportive work that we do in our food system down here. Some of the photos that Elena is showing are from some in-class tastings that we did earlier this week. So in addition to selling to schools, you know, we go in and talk to students a lot and try to just let them know about where their food's coming from. The approved supplier list process makes it really easy for our smaller growers to participate in the product or in this program, because they don't have to carry the burden themselves of becoming certified. So as a food hub with the growers that we work with, we're able to, you know, carry insurance for them and go through the process to become an approved supplier, which really allows us to kind of, you know, mix a lot of our smaller producers into the fold, which is hugely impactful for, you know, the kind of the work that we do with producers to, you know, grow their business and things like that. We're currently in the process of getting of updating our SOPs and getting HGAP certified, which is a new requirement of the NM Grown program. We currently operate out of a certified commercial kitchen in Silver City. One of the ways that we're utilizing this program to, you know, really, you know, bring the food system together down here is we're able to, you know, take some of this data that's provided from our schools and from the program itself to offer contracts and brokerage agreements with our more remote farmers. And it allows us to commit to our new growers by guaranteeing their first and second year that we purchase all of their food. A good portion of this stuff ends up going to school markets, but what doesn't, we're able to sell to food pantries, or sorry, donate to food pantries. We are really excited. New Mexico's done an amazing job of, you know, creating these market opportunities. We're definitely struggling to kind of keep up with that demand, but it provides a really great opportunity for us. We're starting a farm here in Silver City. We're currently erecting hoop houses, and primarily are doing this to better meet NM Grown demand and, you know, really provide schools with what they're asking for. So as I mentioned before, you know, we're working primarily in Southwest New Mexico. We're on the cusp of acquiring a second van and are interested in potentially distributing food out to schools in Eastern New Mexico. So Hobbs, Carlsbad, Ruidoso, things like that. So if you're a school out there looking for food that aren't currently getting any, please contact me. I'll drop my contact info in the chat. Some of the challenges that we have, the current rules for delivery charges requires it to be incorporated into the product price, which just makes some of our accounting difficult. Each week we're traveling, you know, from pickup point to our most remote drop-off points. It's about 350 miles. And so we cover a huge area each week, and then also utilize some backhauling service, La Montanita and some others, to ship our food up to Albuquerque and Santa Fe and things like that. So and also school markets don't usually buy during our most bountiful season, mostly because they're closed. But that's just made it challenging for us to incorporate some of our smaller growers that don't have season extension capabilities. So all in all, we're really excited about the NM Grown program. We are definitely looking forward, you know, to this growing season and reaching more schools. And this year is the first year we started working with Cobre School District and Silver School District, which, even though they're right in our backyard, this is the first year that I believe they've applied and received funding for NM Grown. So it's really great for us to keep some of that produce local. And we just can't say enough about how impactful this program has been to kind of extending these market opportunities to our small growers and helping them increase their food businesses. So yeah, I'll drop my my info in the chat. And if you got any questions, please let me know.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks for telling us a little bit about your story. And we'll talk a little bit more about food hubs later on in the sessions as well. If you are new to learning about what food hubs do, how they support New Mexico Grown, you will learn that during this meeting. But thank you so much for sharing. And it's been really such a pleasure, I just have to say, on the PED side, to see your food getting really far. I get to look at the invoices and I'm like, hey, it's getting everywhere. So that's really a pleasure. So thank you. All right, we're going to change gears. We've heard from some of our New Mexico grown approved suppliers, and now we're going to hear from a few of our champion buyers who are using the product to create lovely meals for our community members. We're going to start with my friend Kim Meeks with Roswell Schools. I've got your photos up here, Kim, and so I thought it'd be easiest if we start with you and we can hear about the work that she's been doing. Kim is also a Golden Chili Award winner for this year, meaning that she has truly been a champion of not only procuring local food, but promoting it, teaching the kids about it, forging new relationships, really helping to build that relationship with food, as we've heard so many times from our food producers. So thanks, Kim, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm a director of student nutrition for Roswell Independent School District. And the photos you're seeing are the beef stew that one of my kitchens made. That is 100% New Mexico grown food in that beef stew. We have had a few schools that have been able to have 100% New Mexico grown food days where all their products are New Mexico grown, local. And it's very exciting. As you can see, that food, that beef stew looks terrific. The kids were real excited because actually they got the beef stew meat, which they don't normally get to have. So that was very exciting for them. And then we also have elementary schools that grow gardens, and it's great for the kids. They learn how to take care of a garden. They get to watch how the produce grows and what they see. And then when they harvest it, they bring it to the cafeteria, and my staff then will cook it for them and take it back to their classrooms for them to actually eat. And I have to thank Paula Camp and Becky Joyce, because without them, I would never be able to do this. They are amazing, and they jump in and do whatever's needed to help with this program for me. The pictures you're seeing right now are fresh lettuce. In fact, we just served those a couple weeks ago. They were from a farm in Clovis, New Mexico. Marcus brought the lettuce up, and it's incredible. That lettuce was so delicious, and my students really like it, along with my staff. And then the plate to the left is a 100% New Mexico grown food also. The melon, and then the cucumber slices, and then the green beans, and then the beef stew also there. This program is just the best. We have salad bars every day, and I especially like it when I can put our local produce on the salad bars, and I would love to get where I could do that year round and not just certain months. But since we have been able to increase our producers' connections, we have been able to offer produce that we normally don't get to offer this time of year. Normally, once our money's done, in October, November, then it's not local food. But now I'm able to add some more food to spread out my New Mexico produce. And it's been wonderful. The kids know when it's local and it's fresh, and they eat it and they love it. And we love serving it. Even after my New Mexico grown money is exhausted and we've used it all, I will still buy whatever I can to keep serving New Mexico grown food. And that includes the beef. I hope to get it where I can serve New Mexico grown beef daily. So that's a goal. Some of these farmers, they're wonderful. They allow the kids to come on field trips out to their farms. And so they show them what they do, and the kids get a great education with it. It's just been the best program I've ever seen, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. I can't say enough good things about it. And I thank my producers, and I thank y'all, Elena, all of the people working with you, and Paula and Becky, thank you, because y'all have made it where I absolutely love it, and I can't wait till next year.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for everything you do. And again, just for being such a rock star. You know, it's that commitment to continuing to support our producers year round. That's a beautiful thing. And I'm, again, really honored that you're such a great champion for the program.
Well, thank you. Love it.
Yep. All right. Now I'm going to change gears. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Ophelia to introduce one of our senior center buyers, actually 2 of them that have been doing great work.
Thank you, Elena. So currently we have 21 providers, senior center providers, and out of those 21 providers, we have 64 senior centers that are purchasing local. So I'd like to bring on 2 of my rock stars. So it's Lois from Catherine County.
Hi, I am Louise Mingus, and I'm the administrator for Presbyterian Medical Services in Catherine County. And Catherine County Senior Centers, and we're so fortunate to be a part of New Mexico Grown. We live in such a rural area that a lot of my seniors, this is where the only place that they can get fresh, locally grown anything. And so it's been a true blessing. It's really enhanced our nutrition program here. We're able to provide things that we normally wouldn't be able to provide, because in senior programs, we have a very strict budget. And so to be able to incorporate this into it, to allow us to provide better quality it's been huge for my seniors, and they deserve that. So it's been a wonderful treat. I have over this last year, our senior centers have exploded in Catherine County. We are providing more and more services. We have more and more seniors. I just did assessments on 5 seniors this morning that are wanting to come in, because we do provide a great quality, and New Mexico Grown is a huge part of that. I can't tell you how much we appreciate New Mexico Grown and Aging and Long-Term Services and Ophelia. She's amazing.
Thank you, Lou. You know you're my rock star. So next, let me also introduce Bernadette. Bernadette, are you here from Los Alamos? Calling once, calling twice. No, it doesn't look like Bernadette's here. So Elena,
she was in the chat sharing about the cool stuff they've been doing. So maybe we'll see Bernadette later in our buyer breakout, and we can have her share.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'll pass it back on to you, Elena.
All right. And I'm going to just pass it right over to Francesca. You're on my tile way to the other side. So I'm going to act like we're in person and pass it to you, Francesca, to introduce our friends with the early childhood centers.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that ECECD currently has 29 sponsors that receive New Mexico Grown funding. And some of these sponsors oversee multiple locations. So with that, I'm going to introduce Deborah Lopez of YDI, or Youth Development Inc. And she's overseeing 17 Head Starts that receive New Mexico Grown funding. So Debbie, if you're here.
Yes, I am. Well, I'd like to thank you for inviting me today to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Head Start. So with the New Mexico Grown program, we've partnered with Agricultura to bring fresh fruits and vegetables basically to our program. We haven't jumped on to purchasing New Mexico grown meat yet, but we're doing this basically with our Albuquerque centers. So next year, I think we'd like to expand to our northern sites. So we'll be looking for suppliers there if we're not using Agricultura. But we also partner with the University of New Mexico Prevention and Research Program for our Chili Plus program to bring nutrition education to our children. So we've been using a lot of our foods to utilize to do our nutrition education programs. We also utilize the foods that we've been purchasing in our meals at the centers. So right now in the 17 centers, we're serving about 744 children in the center programs so that they get to access fresh fruits and vegetables to the centers for the children. We're also sending out, as we're doing nutrition education, ideas for our families to utilize these foods that they can purchase if they're on SNAP and they're on WIC, so that they can purchase these food items at their grocery stores and use the recipes that we send out to the families. So we have lots of uses and ways of sending out information to our families about New Mexico grown foods. So we've had lots and lots of ways for families to experience foods that are New Mexico grown. So it's been a wonderful partnership. So we're looking at expanding for the upcoming year. So thank you for letting me share that. And unfortunately, I didn't have any pictures, but we have gotten wonderful potatoes, squash, cucumbers, tomatoes, some of their fresh tomato sauce. We've gotten a lot of really nice produce from the program.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everybody who shared a little bit about your story with the New Mexico Grown program. As you guys can see, it's happening all over the state. There's all different types of producers involved. And so, you know, if you are not yet one of our New Mexico Grown community, we invite you, please apply either to become a producer or a buyer, and we are here to help you. We are going to move and shift gears a little bit into some skill building sessions. We really want this to be a good use of your time, not only to get to know each other, but to answer questions that you have and teach you a little bit about some of the different program components. And so I am really excited and honored to be able to introduce our next presenter, or maybe presenters, with the Regional Farm to Food Bank Project, Meredith and Bonnie, the newest kind of program under the umbrella, or as we call Family of New Mexico Grown. And we're really excited to work to align our efforts so that not only in the public settings that our families participate in do they get locally grown food, but for those families that rely on some of our other programs that help to increase food access, that they're able to have that privilege and opportunity as well. So thanks guys for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elena. Everybody can see my screen, right, and hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah, so let me just first introduce myself and my colleague, and then we can kind of jump in. There's kind of a lot of, dense information, but we'll do our best to get it to you in the simplest way possible. I'm Meredith Lorenz. I'm a local procurement project specialist. I am based in Gallup, and I work on behalf of the Association of Food Banks for this project. The Food Depot holds the contract for this project, but we'll be, taking care of all the invoices regardless of where the food is delivered for this project. Bonnie, if you're there, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Meredith. So I am Meredith's colleague in the work. I am also a local food procurement project specialist, AKA we will be the buyers. I am working with the Food Depot, but ultimately, to reiterate, and this is going to come up time and time again, we represent all of the food banks within the state. I am based in Santa Fe, and we'll discuss later kind of how we anticipate dividing up the work for myself and Meredith as the buyers in this program. But for now, I'll leave it there and look forward to the conversation ahead.
Thanks, Bonnie. So I'm actually going to go back here to the first slide if I can. I can't do that. Okay. I want to just do a shout out to all of our partners in this project. You know, we are an initiative of NM Grown, but it has required intense cross-sector collaboration and cooperation with New Mexico Department of Ag and with New Mexico Farmers Market Association. And I just want to recognize the dedication and commitment it's taken to provide this innovative solution to food insecurity in New Mexico. So as Denise kind of alluded to and touched on, you know, I think it's important to maybe kind of go through briefly the funding structure because the funding structure does kind of inform our priorities for this project. So this program is funded by the USDA and was available to all states through a non-competitive process to help address concerns raised specifically by the COVID-19 pandemic in relation to supply chain issues and how that affected food insecurity. I think we can kind of all remember, you know, maybe the long lines at food distribution points during that time and the bare shelves in the grocery stores. And this program was kind of built to try to address some of those issues that came to light during that time. And the initial funding for this program has come through the American Rescue Plan Act. So just kind of a framework there. Just to reiterate, you know, it is an initiative of the New Mexico Grown program, but we are federally funded. I also just want to note here that, you know, this program was created to supplement the TFAP commodities program, which is kind of the bread and butter program with food banks that is a permanent program. And there's been a lot of talk and a lot of issues around trying to provide more, you know, culturally and regionally appropriate food to food banks in communities where that makes sense. And, you know, farms that have contracts with the TFAP commodities program are generally very large and established. And this was a way to work with small to mid-scale producers. So with all of that being said, you know, our priorities for this program are to work with the smaller scale farmer, socially disadvantaged producers, that's the USDA term and the USDA language that was written into this cooperative agreement. Although those things are not a requirement to be part of this program. I want to stress that. So one way that we're kind of doing this is a process called the values-based procurement. So briefly, it's kind of a move away from purchasing decisions based solely on price and towards a decision-making process that is based on a combination of other important priorities. For example, like, were the foods grown in New Mexico? And is the producer using resilient production practices? Just for an example. So we find that, you know, those things are, you know, part of what we find really important to help really strengthen the regional food supply chain in our state. So, right now, this is what our funding looks like. So again, this is not a permanently funded project yet. We're hoping that, you know, we have a lot of support from the federal level, a lot of support, obviously, with New Mexico Grown and the state level. And so we're really excited to you know, Bonnie and I and all of our partners have really been building the foundation for this and are hoping that we're building it for many more years to come. And so right now our food purchase budget is $1.8 million, and this has to be spent by June 30th of 2024. We do have an application in the works to extend this program into June 2025 with an additional $3 million. So yeah, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of interest on the federal level, and this additional pot of funding has actually come from a different funding source. It's not through ARPA, it's through a different stream of funding. So that's also good news that, you know, on the federal level, there is a lot of interest in this program. So I want to break down kind of more what, you know, what the Food Depot, what the role is here. Again, I'm going to stress it again. No matter where the food is delivered in the state, the Food Depot will be paying the invoices. We are handling all of the transactions as a matter of simplicity. And also when we're dealing with federal funds, it's just easier that way to have kind of a one-stop shop. So we're working on behalf of all of the food banks, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. And Bonnie and I are really working hard to develop long-term relationships between food banks and producers. You know, this is historically there hasn't been a link here. And, you know, that's for a lot of reasons. One being is that, you know, the need in New Mexico especially is so great, and the funds are small. And so there's a lot of considerations that the food bank has to think about when they're purchasing food. But hence this program. So we're super excited to be able to step in and hopefully create more lasting links between our local producers and the Emergency Food Network in the state. Again, it's a statewide project. We are trying to keep the food as local as possible, meaning if you're a producer in McKinley County, we're hoping to keep that food in McKinley County. We also acknowledge that there are agricultural gaps in the state, and so that's not going to be possible for all of the places, you know, in the state. We're going to have to move food around, but that is one of our values. And then again, all the invoicing, all the purchasing and data reporting for this grant comes through the Food Depot and is Bonnie and I, it's our responsibility. I thought it would be helpful to just kind of look at food banks, just because this really informs a lot of how this program works. So if you want to just take a minute and look to see where you are located right now and who's the food bank that's in charge of your service area. The stars here are responsible, or I'm sorry, the stars are where the food banks are. So in McKinley and Cibola County, we have the community pantry. In San Juan County, it's Echo Incorporated. Yellow is the Food Depot there based in Santa Fe. The Food Bank of Eastern New Mexico is in blue. And Roadrunner also has a satellite campus in Las Cruces, as well as their main campus in Albuquerque. So I want to stress that even though the food banks are located in specific towns, they are contractually obligated to serve the counties in their service area. And so I think it can be helpful to think about a food bank generally. You know, it functions as a place where, you know, they bank food, they aggregate, they process, they glean food, and then from there, they rely on their distribution networks. 562 partner agencies, those are nonprofits, those are schools, those are soup kitchens, and they distribute food that way, in addition to also having their own distribution at their own places and doing mobile distributions, meaning, you know, they take a truck, they go out to a place, they tell everybody that they're there, and they distribute food there. So it's really an amazing network that the food banks have built. And so, yeah, I do also want to mention, you know, they also rely a lot on volunteer work to make this happen, including you know, aggregating the food and also sorting the food and making sure that it's good to give out to all of their clients. This is another, I found kind of helpful slide just to kind of think about how food banks capture food. So they capture food from all over the place, grocery stores, even farms, even local growers. But the food is brought back to the bank, to the warehouse. and it's sorted and prepared. And yeah, we, historically, like I said, food banks have leveraged sourcing large quantities of food to support a robust emergency food network and have prioritized purchasing foods at the lowest price for the highest value because of how the system works, right? Food banks don't have a lot of funding, and they have to kind of figure out how to feed all the people that they need to feed. And so again, hence this program, we're super excited to be able to step in and to create those links. And then this is just something to keep in mind, to think about, how much food gets passed through the emergency food network each month. So 3.3 million meals provided each month, 46% is fruits and vegetables, almost 50 million pounds of food was distributed in 2022 alone. And so, yeah, it's a big market. And so we want to emphasize that. And, only 13% of distributed food is protein. And a lot of that has to do with, cost. And so we're really excited to be able to buy meat with this program because, protein is a high priority item for food banks. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Bonnie for the next slide.
Meredith. So as Meredith has stressed, this is a brand new opportunity. We're super excited to have the funding to be able to bring local foods into food banks, which have not historically been able to support that system as effectively as we could. So I want to stress that this is an opportunity to receive fair pricing for your products, and that we are anticipating working with producers at a range of scales, and no producer is too small. The nature of this program is to prioritize and incentivize working with small and mid-scale producers, where we are, keenly aware that the cost of doing business for small and mid-scale producers is generally higher, and that those prices are reflected in your product. And we have the capacity to work with that and are eager to. Obviously, the benefits of this program are twofold. We are working hard to deepen the resiliency that is being built out here within the food sheds around New Mexico, and that New Mexico Grown has been working diligently for years. And this is just another opportunity to deepen the resiliency. And of course, feeding our food insecure neighbors around the state in every single county. We can go on to the next slide. So I want to give you a sense of some of the items that we are looking for. As you know, as we are working with New Mexico Grown, and we are a bit of an initiative of the New Mexico Grown program, we will be working with the approved supplier list, as well as the approved supplier food items. And with that, we wanted to get a sense from our 5 food banks as to what items they're most seeking. So we sent out a survey to sample what items they're interested in. And of course, we're seeking out meat and produce. As Meredith mentioned, proteins are in high demand. So we're looking for meats, we're looking for legumes, and we're absolutely looking for items that are hardier items, that are shelf-stable items. With those shelf-stable items, because we are working around the entire state and into every county, but we are limited to the 5 food banks, there is still a bit of transport that has to happen with our partner agencies. And with that, not all of our partner agencies have the capacity for cold storage. As we know, that's rather limited throughout the state. So something that can be really helpful in that situation is to have, potatoes, storage carrots, winter squash, melons, and and more common items are things that are especially desirous within the food banking world. Right now, we are not able to accept anything beyond what is on the approved supplier list. And as I believe Brian mentioned earlier, there is going to be room in the future to bulk that out into eggs, jerkies. Dairy is in high demand with food banks, as well as some other like lightly processed items. So keep that on your radar that we will be in time accepting eggs and dairy. So I want to give you a sense of what it is going to look like to begin working with us. I'm getting a sense that there are a lot of people who are on the approved supplier list in this room, and those who are interested in getting on the approved supplier list. So that is going to be step one, is becoming a part of that program, which keeps food safety in mind and a top priority for us, and keeps us congruent with the good work that's going on with New Mexico Grown. We have our own application system, which is going to be accepted on a rolling basis. I'll get to this in another slide, but we have our website, a redesigned website that's being launched on March 1st, where that application will be made available. So we look forward to that. It's just a couple of days away, but getting an application in with us is a way for us to review what kind of products you have, where you're located, what food banks we can start to consider where your product might go, et cetera. So that's going to be the first thing for us. And then within that, myself and Meredith will be the two people reviewing those applications, and we can generally anticipate that we'll be able to follow up with producers within about a week. So there should be a pretty quick turnaround time for interested producers. After that, we can establish an onboarding meeting, which gives us an opportunity to talk through kind of some of our terms, again, what type of product you might have, collect any outstanding paperwork we might need from you, which is detailed in this list below. I think for those of you who are already working in institutional purchasing, this is probably all pretty straightforward. And, you know, we can also discuss what types of products you have and initiate some of the lines of communication. And Meredith, I think if you want to go to the next one, that'd be great. Thank you. And just as I mentioned, we do have our website being launched on March 1st. We're hoping for that, and that is this Tuesday, I believe. You can look at the New Mexico Association of Food Banks website, that is nmfoodbanks.org. Right now, if you were to go to that website, it is basically under construction. In a couple of days, it'll be fully refreshed with all of the background information on the Regional Farm to Food Bank project. And that will be where the digital application is. If anyone needs a paper application, we can make that happen. There will be FAQs, resources, sample templates of an invoice, as well as information about all of the food banks within the state. If you want to talk sooner than March 1st, we are able to field those now on kind of an informal basis. Otherwise, just in a couple of days, we'll be able to get that out to you. And I think that'll also be coming up in a follow-up email, a link. And just a reminder that myself and Meredith will be the two local food procurement specialists for all 5 food banks throughout the state. Again, I'm Bonnie, colleague Meredith. So if you have any questions or concerns, give us a call. We will be able to route your food items anywhere in the state. So should be, you know, not too much legwork to get food involved in our emergency food network system. One of us will be able to handle that for you. We look forward to working with you. And then if anyone has any questions, we can field a couple of those right now, and we might hold off for some of those questions to happen a bit later in this session. So I'll just leave a couple of minutes for questions.
Thanks, Meredith and Bonnie. And yeah, if folks have questions, we're also going to address those here after these presentations. We're going to have a little section where you guys can ask questions whether they're about the presentations or general ones. We have folks that are working to pull them from the chat as well. So if you want, you can post them in there. And thank you guys. We'll give a couple minutes while I go ahead and queue up for Brian. You're up next, Brian, with New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association.
Okay. Thanks, Elena. And we can start on I think the third slide of the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we're going to go into some more detail about the approved supplier program and kind of how it works. And I want to start this by really highlighting the importance of food safety and quality assurance for this work. And as we've discussed, the approved supplier program provides the food safety and quality assurance to buyers that they need to be able to be confident in making the purchases that they'll be making. And on the supplier side, the program makes sure that food producers are aware of risks associated with food production, harvesting, aggregation, storage, processing, transport, all the various steps in the chain. So the program helps make sure that producers are aware of those risks and are properly addressing and managing those risks. And while risks and requirements vary for the produce and produce plus type products and the meat products, and we'll get into some of those distinctions a little later, we know that all producers desire to produce the safest and best food for their customers. And the approved supplier program helps them employ the knowledge and systems to be able to do that. This is especially important, and this has been the case since the start of New Mexico Grown, and something I really appreciate. You know, the New Mexico Grown program really enables local food to get to some of our state's most vulnerable populations. That includes, you know, children of all preschool and school ages. That includes our elders, as well as other vulnerable groups. So we really want to kind of emphasize the importance of food safety as we're serving those populations. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but training and technical assistance is available to help producers meet the food safety and quality assurance requirements. For example, the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, along with a number of our partners, we provide trainings in practical food safety. And our training program was developed in partnership with Cooperative Extension at NMSU, as well as a number of other food safety experts in various partner organizations around the state who helped develop the curriculum and kind of build out the training model that we have today. Next slide. So I'm going to talk for a moment about the requirements for the Produce Plus products. And again, that's, you know, fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains, and legumes. So if you're an individual producer, you can have third-party certification, such as GAP, Primus, SQF, or an equivalent type of third-party certification. Or you can go through one of the food safety trainings that our organization manages and organizes, and you have to complete a farm risk assessment. And the training that we provide goes into a lot of the detail on what's needed for the farm risk assessment. And we also provide technical assistance. One-on-one technical assistance is available for those who desire it to work on the risk assessment. And then for hubs and distributors, I think Ben mentioned that Frontier Food Hub is getting HGAP Plus certified. And so that's harmonized GAP Plus certification. So any hubs or distributors that have been in the New Mexico Grown program already for 3 years, by their 4th year in the program, they would be expected to have an HGAP Plus or equivalent type of certification. If they're in their first 3 years of the program, they can also have HGAP Plus or equivalent, or a hub or distributor risk assessment for those in their first 3 years. And then the hubs and distributors also have to make sure that any supplying farms that they're sourcing from meet the food safety requirements through food safety training or third-party certification. And I also just want to note, we talked a little bit earlier about the role that food hubs can play. And I think it is important to highlight the role hubs can play in the system. We have several food hubs that are on the approved supplier list, and they cover much of the state in their distribution networks. And if you are a small scale producer, you can sell directly to New Mexico grown buyers, or you can also sell through a hub, or you can do both. And the hubs really can help with aggregation, storage, distribution, marketing, and more. And many of them offer services to the farmers that they work with. And we have a current list of, or actually an outdated list of food hubs on our website right now, but we'll be updating that with our FAQ that's going to come out early next week, so that if you are an individual producer or a buyer, you can have a list of hubs that are found around the state. Next slide. So this is just a flyer that shows upcoming food safety trainings. We provide, the NMFMA along with partners provides in-person as well as online food safety trainings. As you can see, over the next couple of months, we have several food safety trainings that have been organized. I'm going to put a link in the chat to this flyer for those who might be interested. And the way our trainings work is that they're done in 2 tiers, and the tiers are cumulative. So tier 1 is kind of introduction to food safety, kind of practical food safety knowledge, and then tier 2 builds on that and also goes into the risk assessment and the importance of using a risk assessment or food safety plan for one's operation, and that sort of thing. And in order to use the training for applying to the approved supplier program, you have to attend tier 1 and tier 2, and then you get a certificate of completion for those trainings. If you would like to take part in an upcoming training, you can contact Sheena Tallis-Tallman, our approved supplier program coordinator, and her contact information is on the flyer and the link that I just put in the chat. And you can also request trainings. If you are a producer in an area where you don't see an upcoming training, but you're interested, let us know. You can also talk to some of your other producers in your area. And if we have at least 4 or 5 producers in a given geographic area, we can organize a training. So, we really do them on a demand-driven basis. So we look for producers that are interested in trainings, and then figure out how we can provide that via either an in-person or online experience. And I think it's also important to note that right now these trainings are geared towards produce and farm production, so they're not required for meat supplier applicants. And we'll get into the meat requirements in a moment. So application information for the Produce Plus products. If you're a new vendor, you are required to submit a full application, and that includes, showing proof of food safety training or third-party certification, as well as providing a risk assessment and farm map, along with other information about your operation and the products you have available and that sort of thing. If you've already been part of the approved supplier program, you're considered a returning vendor, and so you have a much more abbreviated application that has to be filled out. And it really focuses on any new significant changes or updates since the last application, or any new products you have added, and how there might be, additional risks based on those changes or those new products, and how you're managing those risks and that type of thing. And then if you're a food hub or a distributor, a full annual application is required, and that has to show, if relevant to you, if you're in the 4th year or more of the program, your certification, or if you're in the 3rd year or before, your risk assessment, and then also how suppliers are being trained in meeting the food safety requirements. And English and Spanish language versions will be available for each of those application types. Next slide. So requirements for meat products. And I want to start by saying these are the requirements for this current pilot year. We're still working to build out what the requirements will be for FY24, but they will likely include something along these lines as we go on in the next month or two, and learn more about kind of what's worked and what hasn't worked as well. We'll be updating these, but this is kind of our current list as it currently stands. So a product has to be slaughtered and processed at a federal inspected facility. We don't have right now state inspected facilities, so it has to be a federal inspected facility. The producer or the supplier has to have a food safety and inspection service distribution license that's required for any operation that handles meat once it's no longer a live animal. So if you're involved in processing or distributing in any way, shape, or form, then you have to have an FSIS license. Product liability insurance is required at a minimum of $1 million in coverage. The only exception to that is if you're a small scale individual producer that's currently only engaged in direct marketing. So there is an exception there on the liability coverage, but even in that case, it's still highly recommended. And then the locally grown definition, you must meet at least three of the 4 criteria. So the animal must be born or raised in New Mexico, fed or finished in New Mexico, slaughtered or processed in New Mexico, and ownership maintained by a New Mexico producer. So you have to meet 3 of those 4 requirements. Next slide. So application details, again, these are still in development, but it will likely look something, like the current year's application for new meat suppliers, where a full application is required that shows you have the proof of liability coverage, the FSIS license, and a number of other certifications or attestations about your product. For returning meat suppliers, we're looking to have an abbreviated version of that full application. We'll also have English and Spanish language versions for the meat applications. Next slide. So getting onto the approved supplier list and starting to sell. If we just kind of go through this as a step-by-step process. Step number 1, you've submitted your application. Number 2, your application is reviewed and it's been approved. Number 3, that now means you're on the approved supplier list. And I know there's been some questions about, how to find that list and that sort of thing. And, we can put the link to that either in the chat or in our follow-up message to this event. And in the producer breakout, we'll take a look a little bit more at the approved supplier list as well as the buyer list. But yeah, once you're on the approved supplier list, buyers can now see that, and they can, see where your operation is, what products you have, how to contact you, and that sort of thing. And then as a supplier, we also have buyer lists that show, by agency who all the buyers are and their contact information and where they're located. So you as a supplier can, start to reach out to buyers and call them, or you can wait and have buyers call you. But once you're kind of on that list, it's then seen as, the supplier and the buyer responsibility for working out any further details around sales and that sort of thing. And we can go into a little bit more of this in the breakout for the producers. And just one more reminder, we're here to help you. If you have questions about the approved supplier program, need help in, completing the application, are interested in food safety training, want to know the difference between kind of the third-party certification versus the alternative food safety training program that we provide, we can help with those questions, and really are here to support the producers that are interested in this program and help you all to succeed.
Thanks,
That's all we
Brian.
got.
And again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat, or right after the next presentation, we'll take some time to do questions and talk about any details people have. As was mentioned, we will send a follow-up email with like a whole bunch of links in it. So those applications will be in there. There'll be some, you can also check out the website. The NMFMA website has a whole bunch of information if you're just like burning, but it's not updated yet. So you might want to stay tuned. But thank you, Brian, for sharing about that. I'm going to stop this. I am up next, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the best practices, again, for working in relationship with each other. I think one thing I've learned after doing this program for a number of years and working to support you all is, that the biggest thing that matters is that we are creating relationships that have longevity and that are community-based, right? We're not just ordering from a list and getting it dropped off. This is a different way of working with our food producers than we're used to. So I have a little presentation, and I'm going to motor through a lot of slides, but I put them all on here because I was feeling expansive yesterday when I was working on this, so I will not share them all. So again, I hate the term best practices, but I also think the only best practice that matters is that you all communicate with each other, like, period. We are here to support all of you, and you have a whole community, but buyers and producers, it's your relationship to forge together. We're here to give you tools, to mediate if needed, to help improve programs, but where it really is the most important is that you guys are building those, again, community-based relationships that we're working outside of the box of what we're used to. And I know that's a little uncomfortable, and I want to acknowledge that it takes a little more work. takes a little more time. So thank you all for, expressing the interest and continuing to show up to do this important work together. So a few things that I continue to hear from both our buyers and our producers. Again, communication. It will solve all the problems, but here are some of the tips also that come up. So one, be strategic. This is not like working with a mainline distributor or working with the farmer's market consumer. Generally we're trying to plan purchasing up ahead. And so for institutional markets, that means considering seasonality of product. And it's okay if you don't know what's grown in what season. Our producers are here to help you. The NMFMA is here to help you. I am. So if you're like, oh, I really want berries, I can help you figure out when you might be able to source those and when you might not, and find the products that fit your need and your goals. Be flexible. So we've heard a number of stories about this. So I know for those of us, again, that are working with public meal programs, developing menus and having approved menus is a really important part of that, because it ensures that the nutrition requirements are met, right? It's not just bureaucracy. It is actually so that we can ensure we're giving our community members healthy, full meals that they deserve and need when they're in our care. And so there are some things you can do though. Be flexible. So for instance, instead of saying we're going to use spinach, you could say we're going to use leafy greens. That way, when you're working with producers, if something happens to the spinach crop, they can sub in chard or something else. And that just allows that little bit of language shift and mindset shift allows a lot more entry points for different producers. Be understanding. It's not all going to go perfect every time, right? This takes time to build trust and build that relationship, and it's a give and take. And so mistakes may happen. Again, I think I'm humbled to see how the relationships here have built, and that these are all very organic things that are already occurring. A big one is planning for the unforeseeable. So we want to think it's all going to go really smoothly, and maybe we do a forward contract. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the reality is life, right? And so weather happens. We always get hail and snow right in the spring when crops are planted, when fruit is on the trees. What happens? Sometimes crops fail. Sometimes we don't get the yields we anticipated. Sometimes we have staffing shortages, both on the producer and the buyer sides, that impacts our capacity to get the product or receive the product. So do your best when you meet with each other to figure out, how do we plan for those things? At least have the initial conversation so you both know you're thinking it. That way no one feels blindsided if something should happen. And then make agreements. So verbal agreements, they're just that. They're verbal agreements, but they're a good starting point. They're an intent, right? They're not a contract. Written agreements are a little bit better. I'll talk about why they're not a set in stone contract in a minute, but they are better at having something that both parties can feel comfortable that you're working together. And then be open. Again, this is new, so share what's working and not working on both sides here. Producers, if you're like, gosh, this one thing they're requiring of me is just really a pain in my side, share that. Maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe it's just because it's what they're used to and there's some flexibility there. Same thing on the buyer side. If there's a certain way product is showing up and you're like, gosh, I really wish that it was in smaller pack sizes because my kitchen staff can't lift 60 pounds of beans. Maybe there's a workaround on that. And these are the types of things that we hear. So again, do your best to kind of communicate and be really clear so that we all have shared understanding and expectation. So I'm gonna go through these slides really quick, and I will share these slides with folks. We will revisit them when we do our back to school training. So those are my school partners. This will come back to you. But for buyers, we are responsible, right, in holding accountable relationships with our vendors. We do so with broadline distributors. We do so with local farmers. It is a relationship you want to last. So the first thing when you're getting started with the program is make sure you know the program requirements, right? We've talked a lot about this. These are live links when I share it. We can go into it and we'll do it in the breakout, but there's an allowable products list so that you know what you're shopping for. And then there's an approved supplier list, so you know who you can buy them from. So once you know that, that's your very first step. Your second step is going to be to do a little bit of planning, right? You don't go to the grocery store. Well, some of us do, but we try not to go to the grocery store without a list, because then you make crazy decisions. So sit down and come up with what it is that you need. And again, this is where you can get creative. You can be like, oh, I would have just kind of reactionarily bought what was in season, but if I sit down and plan, I might think I can get meat in, I can get beans in. You might want to consider how many vendors you want to work with, depending on how much money that you have. And this gets into a little bit of procurement nitty gritty. But for our buyers out there, you know, you might say, I really want to work with a lot of vendors, so I have a lot of flexibility. Or, you know, my finance department really can't handle one more thing. I have to work with one vendor. That will help you narrow who you reach out to. So then reach out, and this goes on both sides. But I'm going to say buyers, use that approved supplier list to reach out to farmers in your region. We'll talk about some tips for that in the breakout. I think a couple of things I've learned is trying to keep communication as simple as possible. And so in some cases, it's going to be a formal request for a proposal. If it's a high dollar amount, if you're a big district or a big community that's looking to source, so you can still reach out and tell them where to locate it, right? They're not going to, our buyers aren't, or our producers aren't necessarily going to know how to dig through websites, especially school district websites, and find that information. So it's okay to reach out. Call or email and be clear about what you need. If you're expecting a response, say, hey, I need you to respond to me by Friday if you have products so that I could maybe issue a PO. Don't just reach out and be like, hey, what you got? Because then they won't know what you need. And I think as much as possible, visit a farmer's market, go to a farm stand, meet face-to-face. Maybe you can do all your procurement in that way and avoid the formalities of kind of written. One thing I wanted to kind of elevate for both parties is requests for quotes. So this is a common practice for good reason, right? We need to kind of put out there what we need and find which vendors can provide us with that. When we do that and we get 3 quotes, that's called informal procurement. Most of this program works in that way. So it doesn't have to be highly complicated, but producers, you might get emails or calls saying, I have a request for quote, and this is what they mean. Right? And vendors, you're looking to figure out what kind of products can a producer provide. When do they pick them? You know, if it's, say, zucchini, you might have a size in mind that works for your standard recipes already. You'll want to know that. You might have a pack size in mind for what you can hold. You might care about the grade for certain types of products, whereas others, you're like, hey, I'm going to cook it. So it doesn't have to be grade A. It can be a lower grade, or it can be completely ungraded, which would allow you to work with a smaller producer. Think about price. And I put here, make sure it's consistent, because pack size has to do with price, right? So if you're getting a quote on apples and someone's giving you a quote for a bushel and someone's giving you a quote for a case, make sure you understand what those are, because you're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And then other than price, right, it matters when you can get the product. If they can bring it to you frequently, say you would ideally like to have it once a week during season, you might want to find a vendor that can do that for you. And then distribution, this is a big one. It's the hardest part of making this puzzle work. But do you need it on site? Can it be at a central location? Can you pick it up? Can you partner with another buyer like a senior center or a preschool and pick it up there so that the farmer only has to do one drop? So those are some considerations when you reach out to vendors. Vendor requirements. I don't want to spend too much time here, but there are requirements, right? I think sometimes we're so excited we forget to say, actually, we need certain documentation. So communicate what's required to get set up as a vendor. So you're going to need product information, farming information, business information. Maybe you need a W-9. This differs by market, but these are some of the type of things, producers, that you might be asked to provide. So it's good to have those all ready for when you start, when your phone starts ringing off the hook on July 1st, you want to have these ducks in a row. Payment information. So for our vendors, be sure that you're clear about what you need so that the farmers can be clear about if that works. So if you need invoicing in a certain way, say your fiscal really likes to do everything digital and you need it via email, that might matter. If you have a certain way of processing payments that you would prefer, that's an important thing to consider. And then I think the biggest thing we heard this year is being real clear about potential turnaround times for payments. We understand life happens and people are behind the systems that process payment, and people have lives. However, giving people an accurate understanding of, hey, we are not going to be able to pay an invoice until maybe 30 days, or yeah, we can get it to you within 10 days. Starting that from the beginning so that you have a good, healthy relationship moving forward. And then the last one no one ever thinks about is actually maintaining the relationship. So now you've made the purchase. Well, you actually have to receive that product in a way that ensures the product is quality and that both parties are satisfied. So check the invoice, right? I see this a lot actually on your guys' invoices where you've checked it and you're like, oh, they shorted this, or there was too much of that. Maybe it's okay with you, but make sure you check it ideally while they're there. Check the product for quality. Sometimes there are quality issues, right? And maybe it left the farm in good state, but something happened in distribution. So check it again, ideally upon delivery. Best practice is to take a picture. Take a picture when you get the product. Then you have beautiful pictures to highlight and send to me a product. And also you have a track record if there was a problem. If you're like, hey, it was unacceptable how this was packed, or, you know, I think the box wasn't new, whatever it might be, take a picture because then you can send it back and start a conversation. And then the big one, make sure that when you receive product, you store it in the way it ought to be stored. And this is an area we're going to do some more training on this year. But there's certain products, you know, that can't sit out on a pallet or in a case without losing their integrity. And there's others that you wouldn't want to refrigerate or else that would lose their integrity. So try to, you know, I know that our kitchen staff is really experienced here, but sometimes they don't know what's been received. So do your best to make sure that product gets stored just like you would a mainline distributor drop off. And then provide the feedback. Let them know what worked, what didn't work, and then plan to do better next time, right? Maybe it was with both sides. Just making sure that you're being communicative. So then for our producers, a couple of tips. So you'll see I used language in here. It's procurement language. So first of all, be responsive to the needs of your buyer. So number one, you know, plan ahead. They're going to plan and you're going to plan. You're going to know what you can offer so that you know if you're a good match. I recommend that you also be proactive and reach out to the buyers. Just like you, they're really busy. They don't know where to start. The approved supplier list is huge, as you've gathered. And maybe, like Jessica was saying, maybe you're based in Albuquerque, but you serve a broader area. So you can reach out to some of those buyers. And again, on the approved supplier list, there's a reverse list, we call it, and that's by buyer type. So there's tabs, and we'll go through that, and I think Brian will too. Respond to those information requests. If somebody calls you or sends you an email and you want to work with them, you should probably prioritize responding to that, either a quick email or phone call to say, this is what I have. And then a new thing, you know, that we keep hearing about from some of our champions and that we think is a best practice is market yourself, right? This is about growing your business. And so provide information about your farm practices, if you grow organic, if you're regenerative land stewards, whatever that might be that helps the buyer connect to your story. Share promotional information and materials if you have them. Our buyers love to share those with the folks they feed, right? The seniors and the kids like to see that story, like to interact with it. And then do your best to support education. I saw in the chat some chatter about this. If you have recipes that you use, if you have an ability to bring people to your farm or to go to theirs, or even our food hub partners, right? There's lessons to be learned in all of this. And it's all about providing the buyers with more than just food, but a really valuable relationship with a local producer, because that's worth more money. And then they can justify paying more money for your beautiful local product. Oh, and then the last selfish one, we have New Mexico Grown monthly roundtables. We'd love you to participate in those so you can promote yourself and market yourself there too. So then being responsible, again, these are procurement metrics that our buyers use. So share your constraints, be real honest. If there's certain things that you cannot deliver, don't claim you can from the beginning. There will be another market that fits you better, and we're here to help you with that. Maybe schools are too big. Maybe you'd work better with senior centers. No matter what it might be clear about your needs and expectations. If for you, not having an invoice paid within 30 days is going to send you into the red, state that. Make sure they know that, right? Like, let's center our humanity and be like, I'm a person, this is what I need before you start transactions. And then communicate about your orders. You all are professionals. You can tell when something's going wrong. So if you're like, hey, I am worried that we're not going to get that squash out of the field before it hills, go ahead and let them know. The sooner the better. Provide those updates when you can. And then if something goes wrong, try to make it right. We're not asking anyone to foot the bill or self-sacrifice, but there's ways we can figure out how to make it right? Whether that's substituting in product or a credit. You can call one of us and we can help you maybe find an alternative market if you have product that can't be delivered, something like that. And then I'm going to just hammer this one again, meet the financial requirements. And as someone who reviews invoices, it's very live to me, but there's certain things that need to be on your invoices. The obvious things, a thing I don't see a lot is actually invoice due dates. So put it on your invoice if you want it paid in a timely way. There's issue dates, but there's not always due dates. We would really love it if you would price out the product, the quantity, and the price per pound, and then the total. Yes, I can do the math, but when I'm receiving thousands of invoices, that little bit of math work is a lot more work. And so it's easier to be able to compare your per pound pricing if it's itemized out. New Mexico grown ideally should be indicated. If it's not, we'll be sharing logos with you. You can slap a logo on it. You can just write it next to the product spec, apples, New Mexico grown. If you're a food hub, we've been asking for source farm. That also indicates that the product's New Mexico grown, and it helps the buyer know the variety of people you work with. So they can feel really good about being like, oh, I work with one food hub and they source this order from 5 different farms, and they can feel good about that. You cannot have at this point in time separate delivery or processing fees. And I know it is not ideal, and I want to acknowledge Ben who brought it up. We ask you to please build it into the price, and it has to do with the way that this program is funded from the state. It's not funded for admin, it's funded for food. And that's to ensure public dollars are being spent well. So we ask you to build those costs into your pricing. If you need support figuring out product pricing, there are people to help you with that. That includes processing fees. So I can't tell you how many times I receive an invoice that says chili and then roasting fee below it. If you could pack that into the chili cost, that would be a lot easier because when it has a roasting fee, it creates a little bit of a headache. So just a couple of practices that you can adopt. And then again, making sure your payment information stuff is really clear up front, making sure that you have communicated the way you want to be paid if you really need a check or if you're willing to do direct deposit, and be there. Have a good contact follow-up, because again, sometimes payments lapse for a little while and then they can't reach out and find who they need to find to answer questions. So those are a couple of tips. I'm going to skip through a couple of things here. I want to just talk about food hubs for a moment. You've heard from some food hubs in the room, but buyers, why would you work with food hubs? You've learned lots of reasons. Producers, food hubs can be a huge asset for you too. I think the biggest ones are streamlining. Again, that ordering process is really attractive to folks. And then producers, it might be an easier entry point. They provide a lot of those marketing services for you. So it might reduce some headaches about just getting started. I have here on the line today, we've got Marie Johnson and Jacqueline Montoya, who have been working together in using a strategy called forward contracting. And forward contracting, I want to be really clear, it's not a contract per se, it's an agreement, and they'll talk about this, but basically you set out an intention. I am going to buy 300 pounds of corn for the entire month of October. I've got big plans and I need to find a farmer who can fill that. And so you might enter into an agreement. It's an intent agreement. And that allows the farmer to plan for that. And I think Mary mentioned this earlier. So this is a practice that we encourage between our buyers and growers. It's basically a communication tool, and it's a little bit formalized because it gets put on paper. So then if someone leaves, say you change your job because you get an amazing promotion, you've left a paper trail for someone to pick up and make sure that they are accountable to that order. So I'm actually going to ask Marie and Jacqueline if they want to share just a little bit. I know we're tight on time, but a little bit about your experience doing forward contracting. And I want to acknowledge that you folks have been some of the ones that have been doing it the longest here in the state and making it work for your needs.
Thanks, Elena. And I think we lost Jacqueline. She had to jump off.
Oh, shoot.
I'm back. I'm here.
Are you? Okay. Hi, Jacqueline. So for us, the process has been, every year it gets better. As Elena has said over and over again, the big factor is the communication and really getting to know and talk with your growers and ranchers so they understand that the forward contract is not a legal binding anything. It's just an agreement. And what our hope is ultimately is that they just feel, it gives them a sense of security that once they plant and grow all of this stuff, we have committed to purchasing it. So that's the ultimate goal of it. We've, as I said, every year it gets better. Once you get the actual formatting and template and all those legal mumbo jumbo words figured out, it's pretty easy to keep moving forward. And I don't know. I think it's the way to go. It helps all parties. And what it does also is, even though you have these contracts or agreements, you can still purchase outside of that, above and beyond. And I like that when our local growers have, let's say, a surplus of something, we'll generally hear from them first. Also, on the communication line, learning your growers their preferred communication medium is important. I have some that I talk to on Messenger because that's easy for them. I have some that we talk on Facebook. So just, as you start to learn each other and develop those relationships, just be willing to do the unnormal. And I'll let Jacqueline chime in.
I couldn't have said it any better, Marie. I think it is number one, communication. And I think as long as the whole team, is listening and communicating with each other, then it makes the whole system run a lot smoother. Some of the things that we did, run into that I think are great are when the producer and the buyer can talk directly. Because at the end of the day, the Food Hub is here to just facilitate that and be a support to both the grower and the buyer. So I think that it's really nice when they can still communicate and get direct communication. And while we support that, I think those are some of the things that made the quickest purchases and some of the best produce in those exact moments. And the fact that most of the time around here, when a farmer calls and says that they have an abundance of a specific product, most of the time it can get sold within a couple days to a school, a senior center, or a early childhood center. So I think that that's always something to keep in mind to the growers and the producers out there. Don't think your stuff won't sell, because there are so many markets and so many opportunities right now that it will. And yeah, and like Marie said, the agreement is just that, it's an agreement, and that kind of holds some comfort with the grower, because if something happens to their crop, they're not going to be in trouble for not being able to provide those goods. And that's the biggest thing that I like to, communicate to our farmers. You're not going to be in trouble if something happens to your crop. But if you do grow it and it's a good crop, then of course it's going to get sold to that institution.
Thank you both. And I just want to acknowledge that you guys working together have done some really amazing and cool things for the kids in Farmington schools. I get to see the beautiful food that's being produced from Miss Marie and New Mexico Grown Week, and events where there's all sorts of fresh corn and just amazing things that are beyond transactions, right? You guys are really epitomizing what that relationship looks like there in the community. And again, just really something I think we all look to you guys as a model and hope to see more people piloting this strategy. So for those of my school colleagues out there, if you're interested in learning more about forward contracting, give me a ring. We will do a training, or I'll come and talk to you. We'll figure out how to make it work. We'll pair you with a food hub or a food producer that might work for your needs. It really is a best practice of making sure it works for everyone. So thank you, ladies. All right. We are going to move on to just a couple of questions. I'm sorry, trying to manage an agenda is hard with this many people. We went a little bit over, but we wanted to make sure there was enough time to cover everything. So we've got a couple of questions, and Rita Condon out there with the Department of Health is managing our chat. So if you have something else, please put it in the chat. But Rita, would you like to share those with us? And then Ms. Pam Roy is out here too. Pam, if you want to say hi, she was going to help us just kind of field questions as they come up.
Hi, everybody. This is Pam with Farm to Table, and really excited to see actually some of the responses in the chat as Rita kept putting out there. What do you love about this program? What's working, and what are some of the challenges? A couple of top things, and then we really want to open the floor to you all. A couple of top things that we noticed, of course, are things like price. it's difficult to sometimes look at that it might be higher than what you're paying in school or a senior center. But some of the things that we've been learning, there's two things in particular. We advocate for state funding in addition to what an institution may have in your own budget. And that is in part so that we really can really provide the opportunity for institutions to purchase and provide an equitable price for your produce if you're a farmer or a rancher. So that's one thing to think about. So we're really trying very hard over time. As we've said, this has taken a lot of time to bolster the investment so that we are really creating an equitable opportunity for everybody, for institutions to purchase and for farmers and ranchers to be in business. So I'll say that. And then I think that Elaine and everybody gave some great examples of, things to think about about quality and to focus on quality. The other big challenges, of course, we heard a little bit and talked a little bit about distribution and how do I get that product to my place if I don't have a farmer or rancher that are right nearby. So we know those are questions that we're going to keep hearing, and and we've seen so much progress in this work to get us where we are now. And so I'll leave it at that. Just a few highlights I saw in the chat that came up a few times. And then also one other thing I just saw in there from our colleagues at Backyard Farms. If you're a farmer and you have produce that either gets hailed on or it's damaged or something like that, do not think that you can't do something with it, because Backyard Farms is a great food processor. We also have several other processing businesses in the state who are very interested in being a part of this program. So just don't think that there's a limitation there. And I've also had schools say, if I've got a farmer that's got an orchard and they got hail damage, I'll make applesauce. So just always think that the door is open, and don't and always make sure to reach out and ask that question for sure. So Rita, anything that you saw, really highlights that you saw in the chat, or those who'd like to just raise your hand and speak to it? Go for it, Rita.
Yeah, I've been keeping track of all the questions and have bucketed everything in the chat from the chat. So I've got like three, there's a lot of questions and we can share those later, but three top ones. Someone asked, what's the difference between the fruit and vegetable program versus the NM Grown? And I feel like that was from a provider, but that's a good question.
Yeah, so I can attempt that one. Maybe you're talking about the fresh fruit and vegetable program. Maybe you're a school. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna infer here that maybe you're a school. So the federal fresh fruit and vegetable program is just that. It's a federal program, and it is the idea of it. It serves only a certain certain age group in elementary school. So that's one difference. It's not across the board. And it's about introducing a fruit or vegetable as an additional snack through the day. So you can't actually use that money to bolster the quality of your food in lunch or breakfast, but it's an additional snack. And the goal is to expose kids to new foods they wouldn't normally try. Now, I want to say it's a great place to buy local produce, because you might not think that our local produce is exotic, because the way that they guide you with the USDA, it's like, hey, buy these crazy monkey fruits and star fruits and really exotic stuff that kids wouldn't experience, which is beautiful. But our heirlooms are exotic too, to a lot of kids. A lot of kids have never had some of the varieties that come from here, and our seeds that are really unique to New Mexico. So you can buy New Mexico Grown with your fresh fruit and vegetable fund, but that is the difference. The other possible thing is that we used to refer to the New Mexico Grown program as the New Mexico Grown Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. I don't know, 5 years ago when we were doing advocacy, and we've streamlined it. It's the same program, but it's now a little bit more inclusive.
Thank you, Elena. And there's like a bucket of questions around the approved supplier list. So where can we get it? Where can we get the approved supplier list? Where do we find the allowable products list? And I know that you addressed that in the chat, but there were several questions about that.
I'll take a stab. I'm going to try to multitask and actually put it in the chat for y'all. To be frank, the easiest way to get to One, it's a live list. So we'll talk about this in the breakouts, but it's a Google document. So it's not something that I can download and share with you. You actually need to access it through the web every time you access it. The reason for that is not to make it hard, but actually because, as Brian mentioned, hey, we did it at the same time. It is a rolling basis. And so new vendors can come on at any point. If you're using an old downloaded list from a month ago, you might be missing someone in your backyard. So it's a live list for a reason. We'll share out the links. They're in the chat there. And then also the NMFMA website, to be honest, is probably the easiest path, just because those links are all in there on the New Mexico Grown page, and maybe one of the NMFMA folks can put it in there. But I direct people there a lot, just because it's got the applications, it's got the two lists, and the allowable products list is there as well. And thanks, Brian, for putting that in.
And then the final question, I mean, there's other questions that we can share out later, but tell us more about the New Mexico Grown monthly roundtable. When are they?
Yeah, so those are the fourth Monday of every month, right, Ophelia? Fourth Monday.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and they're for our buyers specifically. So it's kind of a safe space for our providers and buyers to come in and ask questions, maybe gripe about challenges that you have had, get support from us. That is the idea. Also to share recipes, serving ideas, training needs. So they're once a month on the fourth Monday. If you're a provider and you're not invited, we would love to invite you, and we will follow up with that. This, starting at the beginning of this year, we actually made them cross agencies. So Ophelia was running them on behalf of senior centers, and I started school ones. And they were like, hey, you guys all have really similar needs, and we want you to work together and learn from each other. So now it is across the 3 agencies, and we will do breakouts for each particular audience. But they're once a month. We're happy to invite you.
Okay, and then moving on from questions, and again, all the questions will be shared. The chatter will be shared. But some challenges that I'm just going to read. So this was from someone from Gallup McKinley County Schools has purchased fruit and meat, specifically ground beef patties for our schools through NM Grown. Some of the products have been great and at a good price. Some items have not been so great and were expensive. It has been a difficult process trying to find products at a good price that can be delivered to our area. So that was one comment. Then there was a comment from Desert Verde Farm. We are New Mexico's only commercial aquaponics farm. We grow leafy greens, culinary herbs, microgreens, and fish, and produce about 2,000 heads of lettuce and spinach per week year-round. We are an approved vendor and sell almost all our product to schools, senior centers, and food banks. My biggest problem is product pricing. Our costs are rising dramatically, and retail prices are also up. I want to be able to feed the community, but need some assurance that NM Grown has anticipated these increases and that our customers can pay more. So again, a concern. And then there was another one from Hobbs. Hi all, please get in touch with me if you're a farmer that is willing to deliver to Hobbs. So Hobbs wants New Mexico Grown. We're having a difficult time finding growers willing to go this far south. And there is an email address. And then, finally, timely payment is important. So those were some challenges. There's lots of other things that were shared out, agronomists and those people that can help with pests, and lots and lots and lots of, thank yous, and we love New Mexico Grown. So that's nice to hear. And maybe we can just compile that, all the chatter, and just send that out as a separate document. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. So we will address some of those challenges in the breakouts, and we're going to head into that for the rest of our meeting if you can stay with us. Distribution challenges, we know they're overarching. I just want to give props to our food hubs who have actually addressed that head on this year, and they're coordinating with each other to move product in a really beautiful way and make sure that we're trying to get to those corners of the state like we never have. When it comes to price, we've talked a lot about, some of the challenges embedded there. I want to address the question about flexibility. It is up to each and every buyer to determine their own price. We don't do any price setting at the state, and we don't lock people into prices. And so that's where the relationship matters a lot, because again, if someone's just looking at an order form and they see that this lettuce is $12 a pound and they can't understand why they should pay that when they can get it from a distributor for $3 a pound, it's because they don't know you. They don't know your farm, your quality of your product, or your story. So again, that's where that comes in. But there is an expense factor there. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more in the breakout too. And we've targeted that there's just a need for greater education, right? Because maybe it's not our buyers that are here in the room, our nutrition providers, but maybe it's your fiscal person who like looks at the invoice and is like, what are you doing paying that much? And then you have to justify it, right? So we want to help you be able to do that and bring them into the fold too. We realize that it goes beyond our little community here and that we're asking people to do something different. I do want to just acknowledge one question in the chat because I think it's relevant. The program is open to all food producers and farmers, regardless of if you're new and beginning or you're well established. It's a great time to take a food safety training when you're brand new and build your farm out to meet the needs of those requirements for risk management. So you're more than welcome. I'm actually going to do a little bit of reverse here, and I'm going to give some closing updates before we go to breakout because I feel like we're going to lose people because we've been on the phone for 3 hours. So I just want to say those monthly roundtables, again, if you're a buyer representing a provider network, let us know. We'd love to invite you to those. The RFAs are opening next week, RFAs for aging and PED, the approved supplier program. Ms. Veronica Griego was here and she was going to share about the DOH WIC program. Their application is open. So producers, there's a whole bunch of farm to institution options coming up for you. I had another one. I'm sorry. Let me look at I don't want to forget any of the dates. We are going to be doing regional networking events through a regional project that gathers food producers. And so a schedule will be coming soon. The goal there is to do these type of things, smaller, less formal, and in person. So you'll receive notification for us when those are coming to your neighborhood. You'll hear from either myself or Denise Miller, maybe Pam. We're all involved in that project or any of our agency leads. There are 2 new websites launching. So the Regional Farm to Food Bank website, as you heard, is launching March 1st. The New Mexico Grown website, we're finally getting one where all these links and all these stories and all these photos is going to launch in April. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll direct you there for information. And then the last thing is that the New Mexico Grown Coalition, which is a group of us, public and private, that work together to evolve and advance and add value to this program. We're doing an open house. We want to grow our membership and we want to invite you to come. So that's going to be on March 31st. We'll send an invitation out to the registrants here in case you want to get involved if you're a parent or a community member or a farmer. And you want to learn more about some of the other things we do to support local procurement. We welcome you there. So we're going to close by going into breakouts and answering some questions, tackling some nitty gritty, and then we'll let you all go on with your day. But I just wanted to express, again, so much gratitude for you taking the time and being here. I know it was a lot of information. We'll do our best to package it up in a concise email. And again, we're here. We're all here on the other end of the email or phone call. So don't feel like this is your only chance to talk to us. We would love to help you one-on-one. All right, Scott, you want to take us to breakouts?
Yes, I am going to open up those breakout rooms now. And if it's okay with you, Elena, I am happy to be timekeeper. I know we've allotted 20 minutes to those, so I'll give kind of a 5-minute warning once we get those established.
Thanks, everyone. That was short. I'm sorry there's never enough time. No matter if we take a whole afternoon to talk about New Mexico Grown, there's somehow never enough time. Want to just, again, express gratitude for all of you for being here today, for being champions of the program, for continuing, to be with us through the bumps in the road. And for those of you that are new, we welcome you. And we really hope that you are inspired to go ahead and apply for funding or to reach out to the NMFMA and get on the approved supplier list. There is plenty of market opportunity and there's plenty of funding opportunity. So please let us know how we can support you moving forward. Does anyone have any announcements you want to make for the last people lingering in the room? No?
I would like to ask a question, and this is coming as a farmer and a producer, and it's directed towards the buyers. Is what I'm hearing from our farmers is that they don't want to sell their salad to our networks because we're not paying what they can get at the farmers markets. Is there a way for New Mexico Grown to adjust pricing on specific items such as salad I'm not seeing anybody wanting to pay $6 a pound, to accept $6 a pound for salad. I know back in 2017, we were selling salad to Santa Fe schools for $6.50 a pound. At the farmers market, our farmers can make $16. Right now, what they're asking our network for is for $12 a pound. That means I can't buy it and sell it to you guys because nobody wants to pay that much. So like, what is the happy medium in all of that? Because really, I believe that what the farmer is asking for is a fair price, but how do we transfer that over to New Mexico Grown?
Anyone want to take a stab at that? I'll just say, I agree for the true cost of food as well. And I think we're in a system where food has been subsidized and where, you know, distributors work at these volumes that it isn't quite that same. I also believe that this is where we need to do more education on both sides, right? So we need to work, those of us buyers in the room, talk about the value of the food, growers in the room, talk about the difference between wholesaling and direct, right? I mean, that's always one of these realities. And for some farmers, direct makes more sense. If you, right, like I know my family, they farm and time isn't considered an input. And so if you're willing to live and look at your price margins in a different way and the experience of doing marketing as part of what you do as a community member, that shifts that. But I do think, Jessica, it's completely valid. I don't, you know, we're working on it. We're chipping away at it bit by bit on the pricing. I remember a time when ground beef was laughed at because people were like, I get that for free. Why would I ever pay anyone for that? And now here we are today. So I know that doesn't feel great, but I also think it's promising. That's my stab at addressing that one, but we do need more consumer education. And if anyone here wants to help work on that, or you have great materials, let us know, because I know I am always in favor of that.
I think not to hammer on the price thing, but another thing to keep in mind is just the overarching impact that keeping these dollars within our local community has. So not only are you getting a higher quality product and you know exactly where it's coming from and you have, you know, that direct contact with the food source, but keeping that money in the state of New Mexico in our local communities has a really big impact on, you know, all of our small businesses, creating jobs, creating opportunities, you know, for kids in the schools. We sell our meat to the high schools around here. And then we also employ some of those students as well. So it has a larger overreaching trickle down effect, you know, whereas before when you're buying from distributors that you can get it at a much cheaper price, a lot of those distributors are based out of state.
And Ophelia put it in the chat. I think it's a great idea. We can try to have some of these dialogues in our roundtable space, you know, specifically for our buyers seeking consumer education. So Jessica and other producers in the room, we might reach out to you to help us kind of figure out some of those talking points or education points to talk about, you know, why the food quality is different, all of it. That is something that's been called for a while. Anybody else, anything to add? If you're a producer, I put it in the chat in the buyer room. If you're a producer and you have product that you're interested in marketing, please put it in the chat. We'll harvest it out. We'll share it. We'll say producers with stuff, and there'll be a long list, but we promise that we'll get that out there. So you can put your information in the chat and we'll do that for you. Pam, I saw her raise
Elena,
her hand.
I was just gonna say February 27th, Monday.
March 27th. Oh, no, the senior center RFP. Sorry, February 27th, Monday, senior.
Monday, sign up for, fill out your application for New Mexico Grown.
Also schools, expect to start hearing from me. I'll make you attend an info session if you need help, or I'll call you and help you. Everybody should apply, please.
I do want to, oh, Pam, go ahead. I'm sorry. You were first.
Just quickly, I want to say, if you want to see these programs continue to grow and build, one great opportunity is to reach out to your legislators right now. I mean, like now. Pick up the phone after this call. And this week, please, to advocate for two things. Senate Bill 4, which is the universal or healthy school meals for all, and also the food initiative. So those are the two things. Senate Finance Committee are the people to reach out to, and I'll put the information in the chat box now is the time to do it so that we see these investments grow for all the reasons were just shared. So thanks so much, everybody. Yeah. Go read.
I want to just plug the New Mexico Grown Coalitions, and this can also be done in the roundtables though too. Open house, Shanoa Dalziel just said, as a farmer, it's been hard to try to adjust our prices for produce as our costs increase every year. And I would love to help educate consumers. And I feel like the education component is really, really important. And that might be something we can do in the education work team in the NM Grown Coalition, Shanoa. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you all again. Thank you for taking more than 3 hours to be with us. You will receive a long email. We will be bothering you with opportunities to get involved and contribute. Hopefully we'll see you guys in person. Some of you will see at the upcoming NMFMA conference here in just a couple of weeks, and others hopefully we'll see you at a buyer grower gathering in your region. So thank you again. You guys make New Mexico Grown work. Thank you for all your work.